I feel like we should put on masks because, we're all meeting like stuff. Okay. So now it's like we're together.
Oh, thank God Fran's here. Now we can start.
Yeah,
Through
Fran.
the chair, we're live on HCAM TV.
All right. Thank you, Bob. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get rolling. And as you guys know, we have our COVID logistical stuff to go through, and my mother-in-law just saying goodbye. So don't mind her in the background. But it is September 14th, 7 p.m. So I will call our planning board meeting to order. As a preliminary matter, this is Gary Trendle, planning board chair. Permit me to confirm that all members and participants and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Rob Benson.
Present. Rob Benson.
Muriel Kramer.
Muriel Kramer present.
Dave Paul.
Dave Paul present.
Mary Larson Marlowe.
Mary Larson Marlowe, present.
Deb Feinberg.
Deb Feinberg, present.
Sundar Sivarman. Okay, no Sundar yet. And then actually Jane unfortunately called me a few minutes ago and said that she was not going to be able to make it tonight. She is not feeling well. So we hope that she feels much better very quickly. And then last but not least, Fran DeYoung.
Fran DeYoung present.
Sundar was here before his name was up. He might have lost connection.
Okay. Well, we'll give him a few minutes, and he'll be on shortly. All right. And then staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Mr. Gelsich.
Gelsich here.
Ms. Pemberton.
Stephanie Pemberton here.
Is Mr. Paradise here?
I did.
I am.
How are you, Phil?
Pretty good.
And then I see Chief Slaman.
Hello there.
How are you? And then is Mr. Westerling on as well?
He will be here around 8:30 for the scenic road, unless you would like me to email him to come earlier.
All right, that's all right. That's good to know. And then we have a number of anticipated speakers on the agenda. And actually, I think we can just, since maybe not everybody's on yet, we can go through these as we get to the hearings themselves. All right, so this open meeting of the Hopkinton Planning Board is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID virus, we are complying with the executive order that suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. All members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The executive order, which you can find posted with agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely as long as the public body makes provisions through adequate alternative means to ensure interested members of the public are provided reasonable access to the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. It will further include several public hearings. For this meeting, the planning board is convening by video conference via Zoom app as posted on the town's web meeting calendar and the board's agenda identifying how the public may join. Additionally, the meeting may also be being broadcast by HCAM through one or many of its channels or platforms. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that others may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials that have been provided to the members of this body are available on the town's website via the web meeting calendar, unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I note otherwise. We are now turning to the first item of the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude the remarks, the chair will invite board members to provide any comments, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Again, I think we all know this by now, but please remember to mute your phone or computer if you're not speaking, and please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in dialogue with other members, please do do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. Not every agenda item will feature public comment. For items with public comment, after members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment as follows. The chair will first ask members of the public who wish to speak to identify their names and addresses only. And I will call on each by name and afford 3 minutes maximum for any comments. And finally, each vote taken in the meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. So I think that we're all accustomed to this format now. And just to really quickly, we do have a pretty full agenda tonight, as you are aware. So I do want to just establish some time estimates and recognize that we may not get through everything, but just want to level set with people about how much time we're going to spend per topic. So I do have, first up is the administrative items, and hopefully those are relatively straightforward. We've got about 15 minutes to get through those. Secondly, the Maspinock Woods update from Mr. Barbieri. And I've got 30 minutes allocated for an update from Mr. Barbieri. We have a new public hearing for Deer Ridge Estates. We've targeted approximately 45 minutes for that. We have a new public hearing for scenic road application at 114 Pond Street, and hopeful that we can wrap that one up tonight. So I've got about 30 minutes allocated for that. And then last but not least, we have Leonard Street petition for construction of Leonard Street, and we've allocated 60 minutes for that this evening. So it is full, and you know, I'm going to ask that we try to be as concise as possible, and we'll certainly make sure that we have time to discuss what we need to discuss, but just want to make sure that we're all on the same page with approximately how much time we will spend on each of those topics. All right, so let's move into the administrative items. And the first one up is the last remaining board appointment for the Zoning Advisory Committee. And we've got one applicant, Curtis Smithson, who, as we're all aware, recently applied for the appointed position on the planning board. And I think we're very fortunate that he took our advice and applied for Zach. Is Curtis on? I don't see him on the list.
I didn't ask him to be on.
Oh, you didn't ask him to be on. Okay. All right. So again, I think just my perspective, I think he brings some great background and experience on zoning. And you know, I guess at this point, I'll just open it up to the planning board and see if others have thoughts or comments on Mr. Smithson before we take a vote.
Mary.
Hi, Mary.
I know that I would be very happy to welcome Curtis onto the ZAC. I was impressed with his background when we were discussing that with him, and when we looked over his background for the planning board open position. So, and I'm very glad that he considered the ZAC position as well.
And Mary, I should have called on you first as the chair of ZAC, so I apologize to
Quite
not
all
call
right.
you out, but I'm glad you spoke up, so thank you.
So I'll make the motion to appoint Mr. Smithson. I'm very pleased as well that he's applied and brings his experience to this position, and really appreciate that he has stuck with it and found a spot.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. In light of no further discussion, we'll move to a roll call vote. Gary Trendle, yes. Mary?
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Dave?
Dave Paul, yes.
Rob?
Rob Benson, yes.
Sundar?
Sundar Sivaraman, yes.
Deb?
Deborah Feinberg, yes.
Fran?
Fran DeYoung, yes.
And Mary.
I think I
Muriel.
already voted.
Oh, you did.
Muriel.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Kramer.
Muriel. I'm sorry, Muriel.
Oh, no worries. Muriel Kramer, yes.
It's not displaying in the normal order that it does for me. So I'm just quickly scanning through here, and I've got to figure out a new system that I didn't have before. Did I miss anybody? Oh, Dave. Did you vote,
No,
Dave?
Dave voted.
Gary, you gotta get on your game here tonight now. Come on.
Yes.
I
Okay.
told you that ATM meeting took a toll.
Yeah.
No
Yeah.
kidding.
Yeah. All right. Well, congratulations to Mr. Smithson, and I understand that Zach is going to be starting up their meetings again shortly. And I do just want to make one request for Mary and for our zoning advisory committee. I think in light of the town's decision to take no action on Saturday on the solar overlay, I think it is imperative that we prioritize that overlay, and I'd ask that zoning advisory committee give that a good thorough review, and and hopefully have some discussion around some of the things that we thought might make it stronger. But
Absolutely.
from a
Yep,
timing
that was my
perspective,
plan.
great. From a timing perspective, I'm hopeful that we can schedule that public hearing for it, as soon as possible in 2021. So that's, I think, something that we're all passionate about, feel strongly about as a group. So look forward to seeing the how zoning advisory committee can further strengthen that concept. Okay. And then the second administrative items on the agenda is minutes of approval. So I will entertain a motion to accept the minutes from the June 1st, 2020 meeting.
So
Rob
moved.
Ben, I'll go.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. Rob Benson, second.
Okay. And who had the initial motion?
It was Mary.
Mary. Okay. Thanks, Mary. Any discussion on those minutes? Fran
Mr.
is
Chair,
raising his hand. Yes,
Am
go ahead, Fran.
am I eligible to vote on this, Mr. Chairman? Because those occurred prior to my.
On, I have for January 22nd.
Okay, let's wait till January. Let's wait till we get to June 22nd. But just to answer,
Oh, I meant June, sorry.
no, that's
June
okay.
22nd.
So we're only talking about June 1st now. To Fran's question, I'm not technically sure if you're allowed to vote, but easier just to abstain, because just to me, it makes things a little bit.
Mr. Chair, if I could jump in, I have asked town clerk about this, and he is able to vote. So the reasoning was, if the entire board changed, the new board would not be able to vote on the previous minutes from the previous meeting if that was the case. So board members are allowed to vote on meetings that they weren't in attendance. It's allowed.
Okay.
You can still abstain if you'd like, though.
All right. Thanks, John. Okay. So any discussion with regards to the June 1st, 2020 minutes? Without any further discussion, we'll move to the roll call vote. So Gary Trendle, yes. Rob Benson?
Rob Benson, yes.
Dave?
Dave Paul, yes.
Mary?
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Deb?
Deborah Feinberg, yes.
Dundar?
Sundar Subramanian, yes.
Muriel?
Muriel Kramer, yes.
And Fran?
Fran DeYoung, abstain.
Okay. All right, and then we'll move to the June 22nd minutes. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the June 22nd, 2020 meeting minutes.
Rob Benson, so moved.
Mary Larson Marlowe, second.
Any discussion?
Discussion, yeah, I have at the bottom of page 7, I'd like to clarify the second line that says not indigenous to the nearby natural forest, flora and fauna, not to wildflowers. That was the intention of the comment. because wildflowers could be misconstrued as the ones that the solar farm planted. So it's the last paragraph, first sentence, the last two words to strike to wildflowers and put in parentheses to the nearby natural forest, flora, and fauna.
That's on page 6, Deb?
On page 7.
Oh, page 7. Okay.
I agree, Deb.
Yep.
All right. So, Rob, are you willing to, you up for a friendly amendment to your, or can you revise that to move the minutes with modifications as mentioned by Deb?
I agree to the friendly amendment and move the minutes with Deb's suggested revision.
Thank you.
All right. Mary, do you want to?
Second? Yep, Mary.
Okay.
Second.
And with no further discussion, we'll move to roll call vote. Gary Trendle, yes. Rob?
Rob Benson, yes.
Dave?
Dave Paul, yes.
Mary?
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Deb?
Deborah Feinberg, yes.
Sundar?
Sundar Subramanian, yes.
Muriel?
Muriel Kramer, yes.
And Fran?
Fran DeYoung, abstain.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, could I just say that I wanted to thank Ms. Pemberton. The minutes have been excellent. I know it's a challenging job to learn and a challenging environment to take minutes in, and really appreciate her hard work and dedication with excellent results.
Well said, Muriel, and Stephanie, thank you from all of us. So
Thank
we all
you.
know how important those are, and appreciate all of your work on them. So thanks, Muriel, for bringing that up.
Mr. Chair, if I may interrupt as well, not related to this, but I forgot to mention for the ZAC appointments, sorry, my son is yelling through the door right now. The ZBA has reappointed Rhea McNamara, the Chamber of Commerce has reappointed Naran Foisey, and the Conservation Commission has reappointed Ted Barker Hawk. So planning board doesn't need to take action on those. I just wanted them to be aware.
Good, thank you.
Thanks, John. And just so folks know, the Growth Study Committee is also posted for the vacancy from Amy moving on as the Select Board appointee. So we've got that on our agenda for our next meeting.
And can I just ask a question about that, Mr. Chair?
Yes, please do.
I think that, so Amy's slot is currently a planning board slot. So I think we have to take action to fill her slot and open up an at-large slot. Is that right?
Yes, John, that's correct, right? I think that's my understanding.
I have to check.
Okay.
So her slot right now is a planning board rep slot. So if we want to have somebody from the public at large, I think we do have to do that. And I would recommend that probably makes a lot of sense. Just putting that out there.
Okay. Thanks, Muriel. Okay. So let's move to our hearings. And so at this point, I will entertain a motion to open our public hearings for Maspinock Woods, for Deer Ridge Estates, for 114 Pond Street, and for petition to construct Leonard Street.
Rob Benson, so moved.
Fran
Sundar
DeYoung,
Subramanian, seconded.
All right, and in light of no further discussion, we'll do our roll call vote. Gary Trendle, yes. Rob Benson,
Rob Benson, yes.
Dave,
Dave Paul, yes.
Mary,
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Deb,
Deborah Feinberg, yes.
Sundar,
Sundar Subramanian, yes.
Muriel,
Muriel Kramer, yes.
and Fran.
Fran DeYoung, yes.
Okay. Mr. Barbieri, are you unmuted and on the line?
All right, thank you. I will be brief, understanding your time commitments. But to summarize, The original developer in 2005 included 5 West Elm Street in its application for the overall development, and in fact had the driveway basically going through the existing house. I was not involved at that point in time, and Bruce, who's is part of this meeting, was not involved as well. But from what we can understand, ultimately, the developer and the applicant agreed to shift the roadway off of where it is now. However, this parcel was left as part of the development and given specific relief for the setback for the existing structure. The original developer really did not maintain the existing structure until Bruce took it over, and Bruce's focus has been on completion of the development itself. So we are asking for the board to amend the special permit and the site plan to accept the plans that we have given you now, and also specifically asking for a different waiver from the setback of the proposed structure to the side lot line. So subsequent to the last time we met, we have gone through the process with the design review board. The plans you have in front of you, and I don't know if we can pull those up on the screen, reflect the agreements and changes that we've made with the design review board from the viewpoint of the architecture, adding a bunch of architectural elements, adding some windows, a bunch of changes, so that they have now signed off on it. We have
Mr. Barbieri, sorry, John, do you want to pull those up on the screen so that everyone can follow along? Any luck, John?
I'll text you the info.
Oh, you're muted. I think they're coming now.
What kind of pizza do you want? What kind of pizza do you want?
Okay.
Okay, so this is the site plan. The other thing that has happened since we last met is we have gone through Conservation Commission approval and revised the plan a little bit based upon requests. Very lightly the existing house, which has now been demolished, but in the proposed new house. So the proposed new house is 50.4 feet from West Elm Street, 28.2 feet from the, let's call it the easterly boundary, which is to the right there. The property line on the other side goes all the way to the other side of the swamp. So there's no question as far as setback there. Again, and there's no question as far as the setback on the back. So this house location, we worked with the Conservation Commission. It results in a 1,100 plus square foot reduction of 50-foot buffer impact from what's out there and disturbed now. It results in a 2,600 square foot reduction in the alteration within the vernal pool area. It results in 181 square foot footprint reduction in the building within the no disturbance zone of the vernal pool, and results in a over 1,600 square feet reduction in impervious coverage on the site within the vernal pool area.
One large barbecue chicken pizza.
I'm sorry?
And then one large Hawaiian pizza.
Someone's ordering some pizza.
Hey, look at the other one.
And we're also restoring over 19
Casey?
square feet of area within the vernal pool area, and that's that shaded area that you see on the plan. So Conservation Commission has issued an order of conditions for the construction of the site plan as it's presented to you. If we can go to the...
So, sorry, Mr. Barbieri, why just shifting there? So what I'm hearing is that there are some modifications from the original plan that was submitted.
What happened was, from the viewpoint of the Concom, the garage has moved a little bit forward towards West Elm Street.
And that's the only change?
That's it. So
Okay.
I think the original setback was 27 feet or thereabouts. By moving it forward, it goes up to 28.2.
Sorry, 28.2 from West Elm Street?
From the back of the garage, as you can see on that plan, to the property bound.
Sorry,
I did a
On
Google
the east
map.
side.
Yeah, that distance, 28. I did
okay.
a map in the original house location. And if you just do a distance measure on Google Map to the house on the next door lot, that was 153 feet, as best as I could do. And again, that was 48 feet. This is now 28 feet. So this new house will be roughly 130 feet from the house on the lot next door.
Okay. So I guess I'm just trying to understand, and to be candid, this has been continued for as long as I've been on the planning board. And so candidly, what I want to do is I want to make sure that we understand exactly what we're reviewing here. And I know that I don't think you've submitted any new information, but it sounds like the plans have been modified, at least slightly, from what we at least have in our packet.
This was the set of plans that I sent in last week in response to the email. So I'm assuming what you're looking at, if you could blow it up, this is exactly the plan that we're proposing as approved by the design review and the Conservation Commission.
Okay. John, can you confirm? I thought you had said that you didn't have new plans.
Yeah, Mr. Barbieri, when I emailed you, you said the plans that we have are the current plans. You didn't send any new plans this week.
The information I sent last week is what the Concom approved. Concom months ago.
Right, but we didn't receive. You didn't send me any new plans. These are the plans that we had.
Okay, well, that's get 28. I can't read that setback. That 28 point.
Mr. Chair, I think we're saying the same thing. I don't. Mr. Barbieri didn't send any new plans last week. I think he's saying the plans that we have are the plans that the Concom approved months ago.
Yeah, my confusion. I thought we were saying new plans. You meant from the last time we met.
Okay, so these are representative of what you're actually proposing.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I was under the impression there were some further changes, so I just wanted to make sure that what we're looking at here is what you have planned.
No.
Through the chair, can we get the zoom in a little bit like it was suggested, just so we can see more details?
Yeah, 28.2, that's the plan that the Concom approved. And the garage is pulled up to the main entry with the exception of the 2-foot setback for the entry to the house, which you'll see on the photograph when we get to that.
Okay.
So that's the site plan. Again, that's the 28.2. The dotted area on the right, that's the area that we're restoring. That's within the vernal pool area that was disturbed for decades.
Okay, so just so I understand it, the house is going right through the vernal pool buffer?
Yeah.
As well as the wetland buffer?
We kept the footprint smaller than any other house we've got. So the footprint within the buffer as compared to the original construction is 181 square feet less than what was out there.
Okay.
So it's an improved condition.
All right. Sorry, I should be doing a better job of holding my comments and questions. So please continue.
So we can go, if you want to go to the architectural plans, if you can pull those up, we'll show you the. So if you could share the screen with me, I've got them.
John, would that be easier just to let Mr. Barbieri, that way he can move the cursor? And
Yes,
Mr.
we
Barbieri,
can do
did
that.
you say that you actually did demolish the house as well already? Or that your client did?
No, hasn't been, no, it has not been.
It has not. Okay.
So this is the appearance, as I said, these are the set of plans that we gave to the design review and the Concom. As I said, the garage is come straight across to the doorway, which is set back about 2 feet from the front of the house. The house itself is set back 50.2 feet. So the 50.2 feet in the 28 feet of the setback meet the setback requirements were this a lot sitting in the district in which this house is located. So, okay, those are your plans. If somebody can go to the next page. This is the back of the house. On the next page. This is the first floor footprint. Again, you can see the 2-foot setback to the garage and the entryway. The deck is small in shape so that we stay out of the buffer that kind of diagonals through there. Again, this is the smallest footprint of any of the houses as part of the project. Next page is the second floor, I believe. Yeah. And again, it's just taking the same footprint and having usable space above. The next set of pages, I think, are the, well, that's the foundation. Next page, those are the full details. As I said, we got some materials in the nature of the garage doors, as well as some, I wouldn't necessarily call them ornamental elements, but architectural features as part of the rafters. And you can see on the next plan, I think it is. Nope, next one. You can see the architectural features we created at the peak there in windows there. That was something that the design group wanted. So we're looking for a special permit amendment of the existing special permit and site plan to adopt and approve these plans. And with that, a waiver from 48 feet to 28 feet, 0.2 inches for the side setback for the proposed structure.
All right. And John, if you can confirm, I'm just looking at the requirements here, and it says in our meeting packet that the minimum side yard width is 25 feet.
That's a setback within that district. So we're at 28. So we meet that.
Yep. Yeah.
So, Mr. Chair, the argument that was made by the applicant was that they are in the GARD, the GARD district, which has larger requirements. However, the underlying zoning is in the RB district, and the requirements for the RB district are what are shown. The argument was made that since this is technically in the GARD district, as it's part of the associated development, but not really part of the development, they think it's appropriate for them to go by the RB dimensions.
Yeah.
If I've got that right, Mr. Barbieri.
Yeah, no, that's it. I mean, essentially, to be honest with you, we're working ultimately, I think, as I said, one stage of the game, to separate this lot from the special permit. It's tied into the condo. It's got responsibilities as far as the condo. It's not using the road. It's not using anything. This lot should have been, back in 2005, taken out of the application when the decision was made to make the entry on the other way. The applicant didn't do that. You know, I don't know why. But this lot clearly can stand on its own in full compliance with all zoning requirements. But again, it doesn't meet the garden apartments, but it shouldn't be part of the garden approval.
Yeah, understood. Okay. And then you mentioned a change to the waiver request that you've got. So what waivers are you requesting?
The original plan for this development, if you go back and look at it, the entry into the garden project, the Maspinock project, was actually through this lot. And as a result, I probably expect concerns from the Conservation Commission and wetlands on the back of this lot. That's when it shifted to the existing entry.
So what waivers are you requesting now?
I'm sorry?
What waivers are you requesting now?
We're not. That was just I guess, a historical point as far as why this lot was originally part of the development, because the roadway was coming in over it.
Yeah, but I guess, so you are going to be requesting a waiver for the setbacks, which is effectively that because technically, I understand your rationale, but technically it is still part of the garden zone. So you're effectively asking that the residential B setbacks are applied to this particular structure.
To the project requirement, for the apartment requirement, you've got a 100-foot setback. The board waived the existing structure, 48 feet. We're asking for 28.
Yep. Understand. Okay. So, John, just a process question for you, because and again, this dates back a ways. We have an outline that we've partially gone through. Given the nature of the special permit, there is quite a bit of just logistical work to go through. It seems reasonably straightforward to me personally, but John, how would you recommend we proceed for should we go back to the outline? I guess I'm struggling a little bit because some of it we've already talked to, some of it we haven't. It's new for most people on this board, and I'm just thinking of, even logistically, I'm not sure how many people can even vote on this because it was started before a decent number of our members were on the planning board.
So as far as I know, and Kobe had been keeping track, Jane, Sundar, and now Fran are not eligible to vote. I believe everyone else is. Which leaves the special permit. So special permit needs 6 votes. So that leaves no room for error on the special permit, but it does leave 1 extra member for the site plan. It's up to the board whether you want to continue going through the outline. It's not a requirement of the process. It's just basically the policy of the board. But if the board is satisfied with what was proposed and for the modifications to the setbacks, if they're comfortable with that, then we can work through those amendments without the rest of the outline.
Okay. I'm just giving a quick look through the outline here.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, go ahead, Fran.
I'm sorry, I really want to say, just as you're doing that, maybe it's just a clarification question for John. Does it, to me, there's one of the things, at least up front, just to clarify, is it to be looked at as part of the garden zoning or residential B zoning? And does that then have an impact on the outline, the nature of the outline itself?
So it needs to be judged on the garden apartment zoning because that's what it's under. Okay. The argument was made by the applicant that it's technically part of the garden apartment, but not in reality. And therefore, it should be viewed by the RB district. The planning board does have the ability to make that decision for the site plan. And for the special permit, they can modify the GARD special permit. For the site plan, it says, upon a finding by the planning board that a setback of lesser width would be sufficient to screen and or separate the development from adjacent property or to allow a historic structure to be preserved, the setback may be reduced.
Okay.
So the planning board does have the ability to reduce the setback in that area.
Thank you. That helps clarify some things in my mind in terms of, what is the baseline that we're working from? And then it also allows me to kind of like frame in what the requests of the applicant actually are relative to the baseline. I hear the dog.
There's a lot of noise at the Kramers tonight. Sorry about that.
If I can make one point in regards to setback, again, so the waiver that was granted was 48 feet from the old house. Basically, the property line was totally cleared out, maybe with the exception, maybe 10 or 15 feet. We're actually, as I said, originally restoring a strip of land that you saw that was that dotted area on the plan that's 10 feet wide that we're restoring and planting. So we're actually adding buffering and screening that isn't there now or wasn't there at the time of the original approval and the grant of the waiver.
Understood. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. So just my thoughts here. And again, given that we haven't talked about this in some time, as I look at the outline, we basically just went through the reintroduction and review from the applicant. I do think it's worth just quickly on hitting on the comments from staff report and consultant review. And then maybe we talk as a board about if there are particular areas of the outline that we do want to sort of clarify or get some additional information on. Does that seem reasonable to folks? I see Muriel nodding her head. Other people feel like that's reasonable. And I you know, Mr. Barbieri, I tend to agree. I mean, it just, everything about that lot feels like residential B than it does garden, but we've still got to make sure that we address this in the right way. So I don't want to take any shortcuts here or ignore anything that could be problematic for us.
Yep.
But that's my take, and I know also that we received some letters from people that are really pushing to try and move this along because I think candidly people are a little eager to get the dilapidated, deteriorating house to have something done with that. So I do want to see if we can move this along, but candidly, it is a special permit. There is a site plan approval, and we've got to make sure that we've got all of our ducks in a row. So if there's no objections.
Through the chair, I think that's a good idea. I think, do we have a rough idea of when we went over this outline?
Back when Fran was on the board.
Anybody?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's been about 5 years, maybe.
Not
Okay,
that
so
long.
that's even
No,
more
not that long.
better idea to just do a quick review now.
Mr. Chair, it looks like it was discussed in February.
Okay.
Great,
Thanks,
thank
John.
you, John.
Okay. So if everyone's in agreement with that, John, do you just want to quickly highlight anything from your staff report on the project?
No, I think this thing has been talked through. I think originally this was a much bigger discussion item, and it's kind of evolved to be, it's really just moving the house slightly. So I don't have anything else to add.
Okay. And from Beta, Phil, I'm guessing you probably weren't prepared to speak about this tonight, but any highlights from your review of this special permit and site plan approval?
So Beta was not involved in the review of this project, and we didn't have access to the plans for this review. So
okay,
I'd be happy
Thank
to
you.
look for it if you need.
I guess that's an easy one. I'm not sure how we crossed off consultant review, except that maybe there wasn't a consultant review, so we didn't need to go any further. Okay. And I guess my next question then is from the planning board. Are there any particular areas of interest in the outline that you'd like to make sure that we discuss? Deb.
Yeah, I just had a question. You were talking about restoring the setback. How are you going to restore it? When you say restore, so I guess landscaping, Gary, would be 5.9. We haven't crossed that off.
Okay.
So I guess that was my question is, if you could go through a little bit about what the plans are to restore the wetland area and how one
Okay.
does that.
All right. Anything else that people would like to make sure we discuss here?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the only thing I would like for the minutes is clarification on what is changing in terms of the zoning and the setbacks, knowing that we have to use the guard zoning, and understanding that it would meet the residential B zoning. So just so the minutes are really clear on that and the public is really clear on what we're deciding there.
Okay. Anything else?
Through the chair, this is Rob. Just in a situation that we're like this, where we're contemplating giving a waiver to reduce the distance, the setback distance, is that immediate abutter in the loop? Like, do they know this is on the table?
It's a good question, and it's a
has
tricky
been-
one because we have continued the hearing, and so there's always been a trail, but I don't know. Again, given the sort of the history of continuing this a lot, I doubt those abutters have been attending and following along with our meetings.
Got notice of tonight's meeting. They would have got notice of the original hearing. We did supply in a butters list, and did advertise it all, but certainly that they would not have been notified as far as tonight.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Rob.
It's just through you, Mr. Chair, that is typical. I know that this has gone on for a long time, but that's a typical process, right? The original notification has to happen. And then it is incumbent upon interested parties to stay informed about future hearings.
Yeah, nope, I understand. This one's a little bit unique because it's been continued
agree.
so
I
many
agree.
times. And certainly that's their responsibility to stay in the loop, but
Hard to do sometimes, I agree.
hard to do.
The setback to that butter actually, again, increased only by a foot. But from the original plans, it's farther away than it was with the original filing.
Yeah. Okay. Any other topics or areas of concern? And I guess I have one just specific to stormwater management. I know that some of the property owners in the larger project have had some problems or concerns, and I just want to make sure that that we are comfortable and confident with how stormwater is going to be managed within this parcel.
We went through that with the Concom. They've approved this plan. I think I mentioned originally that the impervious coverage within the 125-foot vernal pool buffer is down by 1,600 feet. The overall alteration in impervious coverage or hard pan coverage, which was the vast majority of that site, is substantially down even beyond the buffer area because of the lawn and whatever we're creating. So we're having the house closer shortens up the driveway significantly as well. So overall impervious coverage is reduced from what the original condition was.
Okay. All right. Are there any other topics of discussion? And I guess at this point too, I'll open it up to the public to see if there's anything in particular that they would like to add to the outline. Okay. So I've got three things. One is the landscaping design, which I'm guessing should be hopefully relatively easy. The second is just some clarification and documentation on zoning and setbacks, which I know, Mr. Barbieri, you've already mentioned a couple of times, but again, to Muriel's point, I want to make sure that that's crystal clear. And then just want to make sure that we don't have any other questions or concerns with regards to stormwater management. I know you just said that the impervious surface area is reduced, but I want to make that a focus. What I'm going to propose is that we are about up on time here, and I'm sure you're thinking to yourself that we can probably move pretty quickly on this, but given that it is a special permit and a site plan approval, it's going to take some time just to work through the criteria and the conditions. And as I look at it, there are quite a few proposed conditions. So what I'd like to do is actually get this scheduled or continue this to our next meeting, which would be on September 28th. And I think now that we have kind of a clear plan, I'm hopeful that we can get through this relatively quickly. Is that reasonable to you, Mr. Barbieri, and to the other folks on the board?
Yeah, I understand your concern. I saw the conditions that were drafted as part of your meeting packet. I'll go through those with Bruce, but I don't see any impacts of those. I'll write up a quick memo from the viewpoint of the bylaw requirements as to the setback. So yeah, I mean, we can certainly have everything for you for your next meeting.
Yeah, that'd be great. And I appreciate your flexibility there. I think that, again, given that we haven't talked about this in a long time, I think this was a useful discussion, and you know, we can kind of clean things up and tidy things up a little bit, and hopefully get through the next meeting.
So through you, Mr. Chair, I understand. Is it okay to speak?
Yep, go ahead. Thanks.
I understand our time constraints for this meeting today, but I was just wondering, I understood you said to clean up a few of the loose ends. Is there something we're going to do before now? Because I was almost hoping we could vote on this now, since it's been, like you said, out there for so long. I was just wondering what the concerns specifically are. Maybe some of the other board members have some different input. I just wanted to put that out there.
So I'll tell you my take. Candidly, I knew that Mr. Barbieri had some updates for us. I haven't fully been through all of the proposed conditions, and just want to make sure that we put the proper thought into those. I also, you know, and again, I always appreciate a little bit of time to process and digest. And again, given that this has been continued for a while, if there are abutters concerns or comments, and that gives them at least a little bit of opportunity to come forward and address those. Or
Okay,
ask those
I'm
questions.
fine with that. I just wanted to be the devil's advocate there. And just, I did want to make one final point, that I did look at the conditions and they look all generic to me. So were there some specific ones that were?
Yeah, so again, that's what I'd like a little bit of time to go
Okay.
through and figure out
I just
if
want to
there
make sure
are
I
other
was
things
looking
that
at
we
the
need to
right,
have there.
I want to make sure I was looking in the right place.
Yeah. Nope, I agree with you, Dave. I would love to figure out a way to push this through, but at the end of the day, we're applying effectively residential B requirements to a guard zone, and I just want to make sure that we're well thought out and that we've got all of our ducks in a row.
Okay, great. Thanks for listening.
Okay. So John, does that make sense to you? Yes, you don't have to go off mute. I can see your head nodding.
It does. It may be beneficial for Mr. Barbieri to put in writing and just a letter what they're now proposing, kind of to tie up every loose end and give a nice clear description as to what the project is to the board, so that we're all working off of the same thing.
That's easily done.
All right, so I will entertain a motion to continue the public hearing for the special permit and the site plan approval for Maspinock Woods to September 28th.
So moved.
Second.
All right.
Discussion?
Yes, go ahead, Fran.
So just a point of clarification, maybe for the applicant, Mr. Barbieri, have you been in touch with any of the abutters about the proposed changes?
I have not. Again, they would have got notice of your hearing. They would have got notice of the Conservation Commission hearing. Nobody has come to either of those meetings, but I have not. I don't know if Bruce has heard from them, but we'll let you know.
Helpful just to kind of get that data point. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Fran. All right, no further discussion. We'll move to the roll call vote on continuing the hearing to September 28th. Gary Trendle, yes. Rob?
Rob Benson, yes.
Dave?
Dave Paul, yes.
Mary,
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Deb,
Deborah Feinberg, yes.
Sundar?
Am I allowed to vote on this, given that?
No.
You're correct. Thank you. Good catch. And Muriel
Muriel Kramer, yes.
and Fran, you do not get to vote either. Okay,
Can
so
I,
we're
can I
continuing
just
there.
suggest, Mr. Chair, I think all of us are a little bit out of touch with this, and that's nobody's fault, but to make sure that we communicate to John if we have conditions we want to make sure are considered to smooth the process when we get to it at the next meeting, because I think that it's more than reasonable that we have our feedback in well ahead of the meeting.
Yep, good reminder, Muriel. Thank you. Okay, so we've all got a little bit of homework. Mr. Barbieri is gonna document the changes and the design that they're requesting, as well as maybe some additional information on landscaping and restoration.
Yep.
And the planning board members will just take a quick look through the conditions and make sure that if there's anything that we want to add or consider, to get that to John prior to the September 28th meeting.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Mr. Barbieri. Okay, so the next public hearing we have is for Deer Ridge Estates, and Rob has graciously volunteered to chair this hearing. So thank you, Rob. I'm very grateful for that. And so at this point, I'll hand it over to you to kick off the Deer Ridge Estates public hearing.
All right, thanks, Gary. So I'm hoping everybody on the board can halt me if I don't adhere to our processes, but I'm gonna do the best I can. So just keep me honest, and we'll keep going here. But I'm looking for the applicant for Deer Ridge Estates. I don't know the name of the applicant according to our documentation here.
Darian.
What was that?
That's me, Courtney Dudarian.
Hi, Courtney. So, Courtney, I was hoping you could start by giving an overview of the project. So basically, as all the information you want us as a board to know about the project, that's usually how we start this process. And if you could take it away, that would be ideal.
I'd love to. Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to present. And thanks to all of you for working so hard on behalf of our community. My husband, Kyle, and I moved to Hopkinton about 4 years ago. We live on Lincoln Street. It's the last home on the road, 31 Lincoln. And we started doing some research on the property next door, which was about a 20-acre lot, give or take. And we saw that there were some previous plans that were attempted to put a throughway in that connected over to Cedar Street Extension. And talking with a few people in the town and also all of our neighbors on Lincoln, which many of them have lived there for a very long time, we felt pretty uncomfortable with the idea that a developer could come in and complete that project. We do not feel that the road can support a throughway. It would, in our opinion, it would be unsafe for our family and for our neighborhood. So we did some research and we chose to purchase the land ourselves in an attempt to keep the integrity of a dead-end environment and pretty much precluding any kind of throughway to go in there. So that's kind of our intentions. We were hoping that that's what will happen.
Okay. John, can you give a staff overview of the project?
Sure. Mr. Market, I don't know if you wanted to go into a little bit more technical detail or if you were.
If I could.
Yeah, that'd be terrific.
Might help lay out some of the issues we have a little clearer, if you don't mind. As Courtney mentioned, and I head up the design team, a couple of members, Kirsten Braun and Ron Mueller are also here at attending at the virtual hearing, in case some other issues pop up. We have an 18-acre parcel at the end of Lincoln Street. Lincoln Street is the easterly boundary line. So we are west of Lincoln Street. A couple parcels take us over to Cedar Street Extension. And there's an access way just southerly of number 54 Cedar Street Extension. If you live in that section of town, it's very near the beginning of Wedgewood Drive, where Wedgewood Drive meets Cedar Street Extension, just to help you place the spot. We're bordered on the north by number 34 Lincoln Street, the last house on Lincoln Street on the north side, and the Sudbury River, which is the town line with the town of Southborough. The westerly side is the land of Hubley, the land of Pappas, and a short piece of frontage we have on Cedar Street Extension. On the southerly side, the homes along Cedar Street Extension make up our boundary. And then back on the easterly side is Courtney and her husband, Courtney and Kyle.
Through the chair, sorry, Mr. Marquette.
Yep.
I'm just wondering if either you can share the map or if Mr. Gelsich can share the map so that people can follow along as you describe the parcel.
So I've allowed Joe if you want to share, otherwise I can pull it up.
Would you please, John?
Dave, I'm surprised you didn't get to that request first.
Asleep at the wheel.
The color version is also much easier to follow, John, if you can do
I
that
have
one.
it if you want me to put it up.
So as you can see on the right-hand side of that page, the easterly side is Lincoln Street. The northerly side, the top of the page, is the river, Pappas, Hubley, and then our access way, which we're taking advantage of for our roadway. Several abutters along the southerly side, front on Cedar Street Extension, and then that long, thin property to the east, against the right, the bottom right is Courtney. There is also involved with this parcel a strip that runs out to Cedar Street Extension, just easterly of number 34, 17 to 15 foot wide, that would give us access to Cedar Street in another location. The parcels now are almost entirely wooded. There is a driveway configuration at the easterly end at Lincoln Street to allow the homeowner on the north side to turn and pull out of their driveway. Trash trucks, deliveries, utilize that. And then there are a series of trails that you can see throughout the property. And on the westerly end at the Hubleys sons had a landscape supply company. And there are paths to what were plant material storage areas. The rest of the site is almost entirely wooded. This was the subject of a special permit under the OSLPD back in 2003. Obviously, all of that has expired. A great deal of time has passed, but we're taking advantage of some of that information. The topography has been verified and updated. We currently slope from the southeast corner down at Mr. Hurton to the northwest corner at the river. We're moderately to steeply sloped, all in that direction from bottom right on that plan to top left. We had originally entertained the thought of a through road connecting Lincoln Street to Cedar Street Extension along that frontage that we had, that I mentioned a moment ago. That was a non-starter for Courtney. We have gone back a couple different times and threw out a bunch of proposals and ended up with the one that you see now. What we're talking about is extending Lincoln Street to provide access to the 4 lots on the easterly side, and then a new roadway from Cedar Street Extension that we have called on this plan Deer Ridge Run, provide access to 4 lots on that side. So the project is 8 total lots, 4 coming in from Lincoln, 4 coming in from Cedar Street Extension. In the application, you can see we went through the process. We identified through the density formula the potential for 11 lots, and the traditional plan yields us 9 lots. So our proposal is below the numbers that could be achieved, depending on how the board sees this process moving forward. The 2 roadways have a right-of-way width of 40 feet and a pavement, given the scope of it, the 4 lots per roadway, of 20 foot. So a traveled way of 20 foot. We are proposing on-site septic disposal, on-site drinking water wells. We have carried forth that idea from before of cisterns placed strategically at both roadways, provide the necessary water for fire protection. We are at 50% for our open space. It's an 18.71 acre parcel. We're at 936, so we're right at the number for open space. Our wetlands, there is wetlands contained in that open space associated with the river. There's the river's edge. There's also a bordering vegetated wetlands of EVW, southerly of the river. We're only at 30% of the open space, well below the 50% maximum. The open space at this point, the project applicants and eventually the homeowners association would like to have control of the open space. It's going to stay the existing woodlands with the paths, I guess active or passive recreation, conservation, no wholesale changes. As I mentioned a moment ago, we're entirely wooded, so there are no structures, there's no pavement to deal with, no prior uses. So we would like to move this forward to a group that can handle it, can preserve it in a way that Courtney and her partner in this venture, Shane, would like to see it. But at this time, the idea is the homeowner association having control. We have introduced open space in a variety of locations, varying widths. The goal was to achieve large chunks of the parcels as open space. So down on the southerly parcel 10 is a big piece. The northerly side of the 2 roadways, the downhill against the river, big chunks of open space. And then again at those 2 parcels along Cedar Street Extension, number 34 and the DeFranza property. There are buffer zones and lesser widths in other locations, but we feel that the landform, the protections afforded by the river make up for some of the lack of width, if you will, in those locations. We feel that the design is a thoughtful one, is a good one. We feel it's in line with the standards outlined in the bylaw. Given the scope of it, the 4 homes in either way, I don't see unreasonable traffic issues. We don't create a lot of traffic. The 2 cul-de-sacs eliminate that cut-through scenario, folks trying to get to the train station, folks trying to get to Route 9. I don't think we'll have undue traffic here. I think our roadways and the configurations and the widths that we show on the plans will allow for emergency access from fire and police. We're trying to preserve those natural woodlands and wetlands. We feel the larger chunks, the bigger pieces do that. The connectivity to Cedar Street Extension in a couple locations, and again, Lincoln Street, allow for access from the public. We feel that's in line with the spirit of the bylaw. And we don't have any historic structures or features to try and maintain. There's no hunting lodge, no old farmhouse. But we feel that our design is in line with some of the guidelines, some of the ideas that are contained within the bylaw. That's kind of a general overview of where we're at. We're certainly available to follow up on any issue that you'd like to explore more fully.
Let me start by, and John, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's typical that with an open space development project, there's a conventional development project that corresponds with it to show the what would be 9 home lots. Has that been done, or is that in process, or where do we stand with that?
So that was submitted. I'm pulling it up right now.
That was submitted?
Yes.
While that's being pulled up, would it be possible to arrange a date and time for the planning board to go on a site walk for this proposed development?
Are you asking me?
Well,
Sure.
I guess I'm opening it up to, do we feel we should have the applicant representative there with us, or how should we go about? Usually for a project like this, we'd go on a site walk. So in terms of scheduling it and trying to have that happen, is there a date and time that works for planning board members? Usually in the past, we've done them Saturday mornings.
Yeah, I'd like to do a site walk.
What do you think about like October 3rd? We usually just start throwing out some dates and see if who's available and if the applicants can be there.
All right, let's start with October 3rd. Who on the planning board? Mary, does that work for you?
Yep.
Say morning. Let's say like, I don't know, somewhere between 9, 10.
Yes, it works.
Dave?
Yep, 9 a.m. is good for me.
Muriel?
Yep, Muriel works.
Fran?
Yes. Fran works.
Sundar?
It works. Closer to 9:30 might be better, but it'll work for me. Yes.
All right, Gary?
Works for me. Earlier is better for me, but I'll make it work.
Okay, Deb?
I'll probably be up and walking by then, hopefully.
Okay. From the applicant, would you be available to kind of, I guess, socially distance escort us for a site walk
Yeah.
on
that's-
October 3rd at
absolutely.
Free.
let's say let's try to compromise at 9 a.m.
Sure.
So through you, we might want to just check with the engineer because it's always nice to have the engineer there.
I can be there.
Great, thank you.
All right.
And through the chair, where should we park? I drove down to the end of Lincoln Street today and realized it could get a little tight with a dozen or so cars down there.
I guess I would like to pose that to the applicant, to maybe Courtney or Joe. Where would you recommend?
If I can weigh in, I think Lincoln Street is narrow and difficult. The access to the site is better, but I think parking would be more convenient down there at Cedar Street Extension or Wedgewood Drive.
So I think if we try to park at the end of Wedgewood Drive, that would be might be the best spot. So why don't we plan on that unless anyone has any objections? We'll just park at the end.
My only concern is that's kind of a busy road, Wedgewood. Is there any place on Cedar Street Extension or down that way a little further? Wedgewood is
pretty busy.
Wedgewood's the connection to Highland Park that everybody goes in and out.
But Cedar Street is very busy too.
Carboni.
No, the part they're talking about connecting?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Carboni's, actually, that's not a bad idea. Park in the parking lot at Carboni's and walk up Lincoln Street.
That's
Lincoln
great.
Street's about 1,600 feet, I think.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty long.
It's a ways.
So sorry, just a quick question. What traffic is going through Cedar Street Extension beyond Wedgewood?
Well,
I don't,
You head down over the hill to the bridge over the river at the town line.
okay, so there's a lot of people that go that direction?
Not many, no. Doesn't really take you anywhere.
Okay.
That's what I thought, yeah.
I mean,
Through the
I
chair,
dropped off kids there all the time and it was a busy road, so.
Anybody that's on Wedgewood is going to be going on to Cedar Street Extension at that point. So I'm not sure there's a.
This is an option. Kyle and I have a very large driveway, and if you're comfortable, you're all welcome and have plenty of room to actually park at it. We're the closest property to the project, so just as an option.
That sounds like a good option.
Yeah, it's also the end of Lincoln Street, right? So even outside your driveway would not impose on other homeowners.
And the street number, just so we can put it in our GPS, street number 31. All right, 31 Lincoln Street.
Did we decide on 9 a.m. or was there a different time?
Let's plan on 9 a.m. unless anyone has any objections.
No objections.
So Gary,
All right.
I will pipe in now, Gary, to your point. Rob, is there, or John, is there a better as is map than this? That's very unreadable. Or the new, not as is, but the new conventional development.
If Mr. Markadon or the applicant has a better map, they can show it. This is what we have.
That's also what I have.
Can we zoom to see houses or potential houses?
I did jump onto like Mass GIS or something and it showed you a little bit better how it connects to other properties and roadways.
So that's our frontage down.
I think what's confusing, if I may speak, Rob.
Yep,
I think what's
go ahead.
confusing is we usually don't combine the height, what do you call those lines?
Elevations?
Driveway?
Or-
Yeah, so we usually don't combine those with, you usually do that in a separate map and because to me, it's not clear to see the houses and where the driveways would potentially be and the distance to the frontage. So maybe if they do come back again, would they be able to split this up?
Yeah,
as far as the conventional plan.
I think the conventional plan, I think we can get a better map. I don't think we should, my take on it is we don't harp on it. We know the work's been done to see that 9 lots could be constructed in a conventional plan. And for the purpose of today's meeting, we're not going to get through the whole approval process. The goal for review of today's project is to get through kind of the overview, get a staff, get John's overview of the project, get Beta's input on the project, and try to come up with a detailed discussion outline, and then kind of save the detailed discussion for a next available time slot in our meetings. So,
Can I ask a question through the chair?
sure.
Hi, Rob, it's Muriel. For a conventional plan, are there any restrictions on the length of one-way roadways or also the widths? I know that we did a lot of this work when we were talking about the proposal that was off Chamberlain and Wayland.
John, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe a conventional plan, if there's dead ends, it requires it limits to a 500-foot maximum dead end. With open space development, the maximum length for dead end is 1,000 feet, and it requires a waiver past 1,000 feet. This project would be extending a dead end, so I believe that requires a waiver as well.
But we would be extending to another public way, Cedar Street Extension. So we would have a through road, no longer a cul-de-sac, no longer a dead end.
So the conventional plan is a through road.
Correct.
Yeah. So
Okay, that's what I
think
wanted
there's-
to make
There's a
sure.
little confusion.
Yeah,
The
okay.
conventional is a through road. It's not one way. It's a 40-foot wide roadway. The proposed OSLPD concept plan is two cul-de-sacs, which one of them would be extending the Lincoln Street at dead end.
So through the chair,
So through the chair, Rob, to your point,
Go ahead, Dave.
through Rob,
Yep, go Dave.
I would suggest that since it's unclear on the conventional plan, that we just defer them, like you said, let's talk about the effects of the project.
Yep, I agree. Gary, what we want to add some comments?
yeah, I was just gonna, I couldn't hear Dave entirely there, but I was just gonna echo the request for a little bit better conventional plan, because I'd like to just kind of, I don't know if we need to necessarily go through it in detail, but it'd be helpful for me, at least in preparation, to just understand.
We do have to go
how
through
this
it
is
in
laid
enough
out.
detail to come to, I'm sorry, through you, Mr. Chair, to ascertain that we agree that 9 house lots can be built with a conventional plan. So the conventional plan typically helps us ascertain what the upper limit of house lots is.
So to the applicant, to Mr. Marquardt and Courtney, if you could come to the next meeting where we discuss this with a better conventional plan, an easier display with maybe the elevation kind of lines on a map, so we can have a better discussion around the conventional plan, and so we know that that it's just this lot, these combination of lots is able to support 9 houses or 9 homes, and then we can move forward.
So we can come back with a plan that cleans up a little bit.
One other, just as we're kind of talking about things here, one of the other things that John said to, or at least in our meeting materials, is the name of Deer Ridge Estates is in kind of contention with some other developments in town, and it'd probably be in the best interest to rename Deer Ridge to another name. I don't know normally how we go about that process, John, but if you have any comments on that, that would be helpful.
Sure. So Fire actually made the comment. They're concerned that should there be an emergency on Deer Ridge Road, it would be confusing to them to find the correct road, especially since the other Deer runs, and there's another Deer name that I don't remember, is on the other side of town. So changing it to a unique name would help them respond to the appropriate location faster. So it's not, at this point, it's not a big deal to change. It would just be changing them on the plans, since nothing's been approved.
Okay.
Rob, through the chair, I have a quick comment on that.
Sure, Dave.
If they do go with the open space plan, I imagine they're going to keep the existing name of the road, so it would not be an issue.
So, Mr. Chair, there's 2 roads proposed with the open space plan. It would be an extension of Lincoln Street, and then the new road would be Deer Ridge Way, Deer Ridge Run, Deer Ridge something.
Deer Ridge Run at this point. Yep.
Got it. Thank you. I missed that.
All right. So we've covered kind of some of the project overview. Let's just go around. Is there any other comments for just the overview? I'll give everybody an opportunity on the board, and then we'll move into kind of John's overview. So I'm just going to go, Gary, any other things you want to add at this point?
Yeah, I just had a quick question on the color drawing. I was wondering if you could comment on what the blue lines were. Those are bluish green.
Like, particularly in that open space area, is it trails or something like that?
Are you talking about the double wide blue lines?
The double, like if you look down in
Zoom
the
in more.
southeast corner, kind of weaving throughout. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where the
Those are-
cursor's moving?
Yes,
Yes.
roughly.
Those are existing trails.
Ah,
Exactly, right? Those are trails. Yep.
It's just an FYI, and most of the other maps that we see, the trails are usually represented by a red single line. So just an FYI.
And actually, a legend on this particular plan would be helpful.
All right, Dave, do you have any other comments at this point?
I do have some comments. So I'll be the bad guy. Just a general discussion. Cul-de-sacs. We try to limit them in size because we try to discourage them a little bit. And I think if we go with the strategy, this is my personal opinion, if we go with the strategy of connecting cul-de-sacs with an emergency access road, we're never going to have another through road in Hopkinton again. So it's just something that I think we should think about. My opinion, we're trying to connect neighborhoods. Yes, everybody will have a concern about traffic going through their neighborhood, but as was pointed out, I don't think this is a high traffic area like we talked about with the previous development. So that's just something we can consider in our analysis. I did have one other thought, but it slipped my mind, so I'm all set for now. Thank you.
All right, Mary, do you have any other comments you want to add right now?
I have to agree completely with Dave. I feel like I do understand your concern about there being a through road to Lincoln Street, but I see this as appropriate to have a through road. And, so I anticipate discussion around that. I'm also just, I think in general, it looks like there's not a ton of wetlands in the middle of these lots, which is nice to see for a change. So that's good. And yeah, and I just encourage you to, keep all the abutters and the neighbors involved in the discussion and the design as we proceed, because it's just very important to have people on board if they're going to be directly affected by something.
Thanks, Mary. Muriel, do you have some comments you'd like to add?
No, I would be repeating. I just want to make sure that the applicant understands that I agree with Mary and Dave that we need to have a pretty robust conversation about the cul-de-sacs versus through road.
Thanks, Muriel. Deb?
Not a lot, but I'm responding to the letter from the family on Lincoln Street that objected to the curve, and agreeing with Mary's comments that to bring the people in the neighborhood along with the plan to make it inclusive and to make sure that their considerations are thought highly.
All right, Sundar?
I don't have any comments right now, Robert. Thank you.
And Fran?
Hey, Rob, no further comments. That would be redundant. Look forward to the site visit on October 3rd.
All right, John, can you give us kind of an overview from your perspective?
Sure. So I'm not going to repeat myself with the comments that Fire and Board of Health have made, but some things that were of note is the concept plan does not appear to show dimensions to confirm conformance with the zoning. So that would be a request, is to get a table either on the plan or separately, preferably on the plan, showing the conformance with zoning. Another comment is Lincoln Street is proposed to be longer than 1,000 feet. So they are proposing to extend that dead end, and that's a concern. The board can waive it. However, I don't know if the extension meets the criteria that is set in the bylaws to allow for the board to waive that length. So that's a concern, something to discuss. And something that the board has already made clear is that the dual cul-de-sacs is not something that we look for in Hopkinton, and it's not necessarily good planning. I understand the reasons why, but we're looking at a neighborhood level design here and not necessarily just a one road design. So that's a concern. And it does appear to pull from Chamberlain Wayland, and Chamberlain Wayland had different restrictions on the site that kind of necessitated that. So those don't necessarily apply here.
Okay, thank you. All right, Phil, are you on and unmuted? Are you ready at this point to give kind of a beta overview of this project?
Sure. I could share my screen.
That would be great.
See that?
I don't see it yet. Oh, it's coming through now.
See that?
Yep.
Okay. So this is the conventional subdivision that we reviewed, and generally we found that it meets the requirements, lot size, frontage, and square that's required for the building footprint. We did not, however, in preparation of this meeting, I found a few other things that were of a little concern. One is the offset between Woodridge Drive and the proposed drive is less than the required 125 feet. So they would need a variance to put in a new road there. And also as was outlined in the traffic study, there's a significant issue with site distance here. Mostly, I think, with vegetation. So that would have to be kind of a plan that needs to be identified and worked out as part of the approval. If the either road goes there, that's going to be a similar issue. Again, those two items were not included in my letter, but as was already discussed already, the issue. So generally, we find that they could, with this plan, they could construct, provided that they get the variance for the separation here. And I don't know if they've looked into lining up the driveway with Woodridge Drive. It would require some manipulation and possibly, yeah, it looks like some zoning issues would arise from that. But and then for the conventional road, so it was already stated that Lincoln Street is a narrow, as many of you already have stated, narrow, so there's already 12 residences on Lincoln Street. This would add another 4. It's fairly narrow. I didn't measure it when I was out there, but I should have. But it's as you already discussed, trying to find a place to park. It's difficult to get to, so we would want to make sure that the fire department is comfortable with the access here, and/or if there was a drive-through for the conventional, we probably want to see some upgrades to Lincoln Street, just to bring it more into conformance for traffic safety. And obviously pedestrian safety as well. But they are adding, we measured the existing Lincoln Street to be about 1,700 feet long. They're adding another almost 400 feet to that length as well. And we do note on this edge, the 100-foot buffer is not included here along this the outer boundary of this. It's kind of an irregular shaped lot, so that's probably very difficult to do. And what else?
Phil, we lost your audio, or at least I did.
What
I
was
did
the last thing
also.
you heard? What was the last thing you heard? You hear me?
I hear you now.
The boundary, it appeared the boundary, the odd shaped lot is the last thing I heard.
Yeah, okay, so, yeah, that was the last comment I had. I don't think there's any, oh, and just the path, I would expect that a better job of maybe connecting some of these paths to make use of the open space, as well. So those are the general comments we have so far.
All right, let me. We have Chief Slaman on. I think it's appropriate now to Chief. I know I believe you've reviewed this project. Do you have some preliminary comments you'd like to share with the public and the board? And can we unmute you? Oh, there you go.
I made it. Thanks. I'm at home. This computer's a little slower than the one at work, but so I did have my team submitted a list of comments for you. I think just from I understand this is a process. So from a broad sense, the access is an issue as proposed in the open space. Certainly, the length of Lincoln Street would concern us. That's just a really long way to extend a dead end road. Municipal water is always our first choice. Cisterns are really challenging, and I've inherited about 40 cisterns that don't have maintenance plans. So it's something that long term I'm trying to figure out how to solve for the community. So the addition of 4 small cisterns, I'd have a lot of dialogue with you on how we might be able to improve that. Understanding delivering municipal water there would be quite challenging. So width of the road, I think one of your speakers in the planning board brought it up that Lincoln Street had a lot of narrow areas. So either proposal, you need to try to figure out how we can improve Lincoln Street. What else do I have? And I'll just make myself available for more questions. I think we got to see how this unfolds before I can give you some solid feedback.
Okay, great. So let me, for the interest of time in our agenda today, I think now is a pretty good stopping point to continue to try to pick the next date. We can pick this up to move it forward.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mayor.
I think that we need to hear from any members of the public who might be here for this part of the hearing, just to see if they have initial concerns and feedback.
All right, yeah, that's a good idea, Muriel. So everybody that's kind of dialed into the Zoom meeting, use the raise hand function. You should see if you go to participants, the bottom right, you can see raise hand. Just click the raise hand. So Maury Gasser is hand raised. Can we unmute him to allow him to join the conversation?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, Maury, can you just state your name and address? And
I'm Maury Gasser, 28 South Mill Street, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Hopkinton Area Land Trust. Since this is an OSLPD where the open space is retained by the homeowners, does that mean there's going to be a conservation restriction on it? And if so, is there any idea who would be the grantee on that?
So it's my understanding from the original proposal, the homeowners association would be the grantee. So anyone that's currently living in one of the 8 homes, they'd be kind of entitled to use of. They'd be the owners of that open space. And in our bylaws for an open space development, that open space land needs to basically remain in kind of undisturbed state. John, do you have anything more to add to that?
So there's a section 210-114 in the zoning bylaws, common open space ownership and management. They would need to conform to that, however they propose to dispose of the land.
Okay, if it's a conservation restriction, the owner of the land can't be the grantee of the conservation restriction. So it would have to be another organization.
It'd be the homeowners association, which would be comprised of the people that own those homes.
They own the land, right, but the conservation restriction has to be granted to another organization that is not the owner.
To the chair, Rob, I have a comment, please.
Sure, Dave, go ahead.
So I actually was going to suggest it, but I decided not to bring it up at this point. This subject, I figure we could talk about it a little further down the road, but I was going to suggest to the applicant that they consider donating the land to the Hawks, or because if you look at a lot of our developments, the land is given to Hall, and they manage it. My concerns about the homeowners association owning it is that it wouldn't really be a lot of public access to the trails, which would be a big concern. We're trying to promote the trail system in Hopkinton. And I think that's where Mr. Gasser's coming from.
Right. I'm not suggesting Halt necessarily wants this. That remains to be determined. But I'm just wondering whether there's a chance that we would have some involvement, because typically we get open space or we get conservation restrictions on the open space in town. So I need to know kind of how much attention I should pay to this.
Rob, can I suggest you add it to the agenda? I mean, to the outline,
Yeah, that sounds like,
so that we follow up on that?
yep. All right, Maury, do you have anything else, or we're going to go down the list here?
That's it for now.
All right, thanks. So I'm not sure. The next one on the list is S. I'm not sure what your name is, but it shows up as S. Popekes. So if you'd like to, if we could be unmuted and.
Still muted. Oh,
I think.
Hi, this is Stephen Popkis.
Hi, Stephen.
24 Cedar Street Extension. One thing I wanted to comment on, there was a statement earlier made that if there was a straight through road, there wouldn't be much of a traffic problem. I think that is error. I don't think that's correct. I think what will happen is people will shoot through that road, go up Lincoln Street, trying to avoid the Cedar Street Extension intersection, to either go left to there or right down to Hopkinton Center. So I just wanted to point that out.
So if it's a through road, you think there'll be traffic on that through street that would.
Yes, I think it would be difficult. I also think people are characterizing when you come out of Overlook and go left over Bridge Street that it is not well used. That is also not correct. People use that a lot, and they use it to either avoid the intersection down by Fitzy's, or they use it to make a left turn towards 495. There is a lot of traffic on that road. And I think if you have a cross street, open up that street to Lincoln, you're going to get a lot of traffic using it.
Okay.
That's all I had to say.
Just a quick comment on that, if I may.
Sure, Dave, go ahead.
I did repeat what the applicant had said, that I didn't think there would be much traffic through there. But after I said that, I did look at the map, and thank you for that suggestion for that speaker who just said that, because it does look like it would be, especially if you're looking at aligning Wedgwood with that new road, it would be definitely a third option for all the folks coming out of Highland Park to get to where they want to be. So thank you.
I agree, Dave. I do think it would be a cut through, and there would be increased traffic on that road if they were connected. All right, let's go to, if I pronounce this correctly, Surpria.
Yes, hi, Shripriya Srinivas. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, could you just state your name and your address?
Yes, the name is Shripriya Srinivas and my address is 34 Lincoln Street. I'm the super last house on Lincoln Street. And my concern is, there's the Lincoln Street tends to bend a little bit as it becomes a cul-de-sac. When if you see the plan, I'm sure there's a lot of engineering idea that went in. Probably there's a reason why the road bends that way. But what happens is, my house or our family just loses a lot of privacy in there. Last night, I took a video of how it would actually look if a car came out of that particular, bend, and all the 3 bedrooms, kitchen, and dining were flushed with the headlights from the car. So I would like to know, is there any way to kind of straighten that bend, or is there any way to like not have that sharp, like that huge curve, to that plan? That's one thing. The next thing was, I don't want to repeat what Stephen or Dave had just said. It completely changes if it became a through road. It will obviously cause a lot of traffic. But my primary concern definitely is the bend that happens right in front of my house. And I would really appreciate, and I'd be very thankful if there's anything we can do to avoid that bend. And if it became like a straight line, it would be very, very appreciated.
All right, Surpaya, thank you very much. So the board understands that request, and the applicant heard the request as well. So thank you for your input.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much for hearing me out.
All right, Courtney Lucier.
This is again the applicant. I just wanted to take a moment to respond to Maury. We have been doing our research in regards to the open space, and although we haven't made a decision, a definitive decision yet, Halt is actually at the top of our list in regards to that open space. So, I know he mentioned he may not want it, but we've been seriously considering Halt. So we have tried to work on that. And I did want to just mention, I know that a few members recommended that we remain active with our neighbors. And I do want to just point out to you that I don't know how we could have been more active as of right now. We purchased this land and closed on March 6th this year. And March 6th, we were knocking on doors of our neighbors. We have fantastic relationships with the people on Lincoln. Once COVID began, we couldn't go to homes anymore. We sent emails, we sent certified mail to people on Lincoln and any abutters on Cedar Street Extension. We hosted an event at our home where my husband set up chairs 6 feet apart, had hand sanitizer, and anybody was welcome to come take a look. We've been very transparent, and we have welcomed recommendations, suggestions, and it matters to us what our neighbors think of this project. It affects us, but it affects them as well. And we don't forget that. We don't plan on leaving, and we live with these people. These are our neighbors, and they're going to remain our neighbors, and that's been very important to us. So I do just want to point out that we've gone out of our way to make sure they're all informed and have a voice.
Thanks, Courtney. Really appreciate that input. And last person with their hand raised right now is Mike DeFranza.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Mike DeFranza. I live at 50 Cedar Street Extension, which abuts the property or where the access to the road would be from Cedar Street Extension. 2 things I'd like to point out, one that was already brought up, and that is the traffic on that road. That road is actually very heavily trafficked. And I know that the developers have done a traffic study. I do want to point out, though, that the traffic study that was done during COVID, when traffic was down significantly. And so that should just be factored into the thought process as far as what traditional traffic looks like, because people do use it, in fact, to cut through. It's very, very heavily trafficked, and actually a very dangerous road for pedestrians. And so that's another factor that needs to be baked into the equation. I will agree with Courtney. They've been great in communicating with us and talking with us about potential solutions. So they have done a good job with that to date, and I think there's good open dialogue, at least with me and them, trying to solve whatever the issues are. But one of the concerns I have, and I've expressed this to Courtney and to Shane, is that our property had a very difficult time siting a well for the property itself. And so I am concerned about the impact that this project will have on our drinking supply, our water supply. And I am working with Shane and Courtney to try to come up with a solution to that. But I just want that to be noted. And then the last item is that the land that is the buffer between our property and the project, we would like to see that as conservation land so that it will not be disturbed in the future by a homeowners association or somebody else making a decision of that, because part of the proposal that has been made is that they will protect our privacy through that buffer. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
All right, Mike, that's, thank you very much for that input. That's terrific. All right, so let me just, go ahead.
I'm sorry, through you, Robert. I just had a question when Phil was talking about the Cedar Street end of the roadway and needing a variance. Is that a variance from the Board of Appeals, or is that an action that the planning board can take?
Phil, I don't know, John, or Phil, do you have input on this?
So it would require relief from the subdivision control law as it relates to the center line to center line distance from the new roadway to the existing Wood Street.
I agree. I believe it's a subdivision control issue, not a zoning issue.
Okay, thank you.
All right, let me, John, what is our next availability to get this on our next meeting agenda?
So the next meeting is the 28th. However, we've got the Buckland Leonard Street project, not the Leonard Street project, the Buckland Leonard Street project. So likely that won't be discussed. However, we also do have 2 scenic road hearings, and we have another petition to construct a private road on that 28th, in addition to the Maspinock Woods that was just added. So it's a pretty full agenda at the moment. The next meeting after that is October 19th. It's that far into.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Gary.
Through the chair, just a thought, and especially with our site walk on October 3rd and a full agenda on the 28th, I'm just wondering if it makes sense to. I know it's probably a couple weeks, 2 weeks further than the applicant would like, but I'm wondering if it makes sense to schedule this for the 19th of October.
Would that be okay with the applicant Courtney to have this on our next agenda, meeting agenda on the 19th, October 19th?
We'd certainly like it to be addressed as soon as possible, but if that's what's within your capabilities, then that's what we'll do.
All right, let's plan on having it on the 19th, and we'll try to get through as much of the process as we can. Just my input, I think it's really good for the community when somebody that lives where they're trying to develop a project. I think that those projects have the best outcome. So I personally like to see this, and we'll be here with the help you through the process, or work with you through the process. So look forward to talking to you on the 19th and a site walk on October 3rd.
Mr. Chair, the board needs to vote to continue that to the 19th.
Okay, so let me just.
I'll make a motion to continue this hearing to the 19th of October.
I'll second that.
All right, let me go down the roll call here. Rob Benson, yes. Gary?
Yes. Gary Trendle, yes.
Dave Paul?
Dave Paul, yes.
Mary?
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Muriel?
Muriel Kramer, yes.
Deb?
Deborah Feinberg, yes.
Sundar?
Sundar Sivaraman, yes.
And Fran?
Fran DeYoung, yes.
All right, great. Thanks for bearing with me and the first time chairing one of our one of our topics. And now I'll hand it back to Gary for next item.
Right. Thank you, Rob, and great job. I've I've been there myself, and thought you did a wonderful job of facilitating the conversation. So thank you. And I just I feel like I wanted to add one more comment too for the applicant, that we're always sort of, in general, we're telling people, if you don't like what a developer is proposing to do with the land, then get involved and buy it yourself, and that's exactly what they did here. So I applaud them for getting involved and taking initiative, and hopefully there is a workable solution moving forward.
Thank you.
So next on the agenda is the scenic road application for 114 Pond Street, and Brian Gassett, or as it's written here, Brain Gassett. Brian, are you on the call?
Hello, I am here.
Hello, sir. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you.
So hopefully we can be relatively quick, but we do have a process to follow. So
Absolutely.
If you can just give us a quick overview of why you've requested
Okay, well,
application for the scenic road modification.
as you know, I'm Brian Gassett. I've been a builder in Hopkinton for years. I've met with the board several times on several different items over the years. And I was hired by the property owner, Sean McGrail, and he had hired Dave Marquardon Engineering, and Dave's with myself tonight. And what we'd like to do is put a driveway entrance at 114 Pond Street. And what we have is a 22-foot opening in a stone wall. And due to site distance, we have 2 trees that we feel need to be removed.
Okay.
Sean McGrail, who hired me to build the home, he's also a 25-year resident of Hopkinton, and obviously loves the area, and we'd like to see what we can do on getting that going.
Okay. Thanks for the overview. We will go through, again, we've got an outline that we use here. But let's start with comments received. And so we'll start with comments from our principal planner. So John, do you want to?
Sure. So
your comments?
Yep. So I put the plan up. Hopefully everyone can see that. I'm going to zoom in on the area in question. Pretty standard scenic road. They're proposing to cut 2 trees and remove a section of stone wall. They are going to replace the stone wall, as I believe, interior to the lot, so it wouldn't necessarily be a replacement. So it would be an effective removal of the stone wall. They're cutting 2 pretty large trees, and I believe it's this one and this one, 24-inch oak and a 21-inch oak. Obviously a concern when large trees are removed, but I would like to see some type of mitigation proposed in terms of planting trees to offset those cuttings. Also to provide photographs of the stone wall. It's not going to be a replacement, so it's not in the same way that we would do something for like the access road for TGA Solar, where we need to check how it was before and after to make sure that it's the same, but just to have photographs of the stone wall beforehand so that we know that the parts that are remaining as they were, staying as close to that as possible. And providing the dimensions of the relocated stone walls would be helpful, just so we know that the stones are being reused. And then there's other comments. Mr. Westerling, who is here, has comments from Public Works, and Conservation Agent had comments that I have also put in there. Concerns about wetland buffer impacts for an adjacent property.
All right, thanks, John. Mr. Westerling, do you want to just write a quick overview of your brief comments?
Sure. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Board. I met out at the site twice with Brian Gassett, and once he brought his engineer from Marquardon. There's an issue out there with insufficient stopping sight distance for vehicles that are traveling westerly along Pond Street. And we looked at a couple of different options. Apparently there is a reluctance to relocate the driveway to a safer location. The applicant did provide us with a letter stating that they would indemnify the town from any accidents that happen there. However, at this point, we don't have comments back from town council yet. The letter was just received yesterday. So at this point, I'm reluctant to offer a recommendation to cut those trees in the event that the driveway has to be relocated.
All right, thank you, Mr. Westerling.
You're welcome.
And then we've also got some comments from conservation. And sorry, John, do we have anybody on the call to speak to those?
No, those were just sent from the conservation agent. The neighboring property or an abutting property has wetlands that the work would be within the buffer, so there would be concerns with that.
Okay, got it. And Mr. Gassett, just one quick question for you. The trees in question that you wanted to remove, I'm curious because those are not within the driveway. So I'm wondering if you could just provide a little bit more clarity on why you want to remove those particular trees that are in the right of way for Pond Street.
Those are mainly for line of sight when you try to come out of that driveway. As you know, Pond Street varies from width all over the place, from anywhere from 15 feet, 18 feet, 12 feet, I mean, up and down. When you come out of that driveway, that would give you much better sight distance, both directions. And, you know, when we spoke with Mr. Westerling, what we were finding was that under the rule, and I have Mr. Dave Macron here, he can give you the technical information, but basically when he did a site plan, this seemed to be the best location for that driveway because of reaction time, because there is a little bit of hump in the road on the eastbound side from that driveway. And we just felt it was the safest place to put that driveway. And it's all about reaction time, being able to have enough time to, you know, stop or not if somebody is, you know, coming too fast, obviously. What doesn't show on that is on the right side of the property, on the east side, is a massive, beautiful tree. And, you know, we don't want to be near that. And that really blocks the view when you get up closer to the street. It would be a real difficult tree to see around. This seems the most appropriate location for that driveway.
Okay, thank you. And so, and I appreciate your thoughtfulness with regards to other trees as well. Just to confirm though, so the location that you've chosen is primarily because you believe that's the safest location for the
yes,
for the driveway?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a little downhill from that area. It gives you more room to react. Again, if you go all up and down Pond Street, this driveway isn't any worse than any other driveways that are all over town. I've done a lot of homes in town, and in my opinion, this is definitely the best location and safest for this site.
Through the chair.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Westerling.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We did look at other options. That the primary problem with the stopping sight distance is that there's a rise in Pond Street just to the east of this. And the engineer didn't evaluate that location, but that would be a location that, in my opinion, would satisfy the stopping sight distance requirements. At this point, I'm not sure. We're still talking with town council whether the DPW will permit this proposed location. That's why, again, I'm reluctant to recommend that those trees be allowed to be taken down at this time.
Okay, thank you. All right, so just really quickly from a process perspective, we do have an outline here. This is a fairly standard outline that we use. And to be candid, I think that there's a few items here that don't apply. For example, noise, HVAC exhaust systems, crosswalk. There are no crosswalk locations or sidewalks there. Building design and landscape, but we'll go ahead and use this rough outline for the discussion here. I guess before we go into the outline, I just want to first ask the members of the board if there are additional topics that they would like to add to the outline.
Could I interrupt for a second, Mr.
Yes,
Chair?
of course.
If we're not sure that the DPW will permit this, does this actually seem like a good use of everybody's time until we know that this is even a tenable option? I'll be honest, I haven't done this forever and I haven't watched every planning board meeting before I started, but indemnifying the town against an accident would have to be an extraordinary step that I am going to want to understand a lot better before I go through the process of trying to make this happen.
Thanks, Meryl. I think that's a fair question. I thought about that, and you know, I guess we have two options here. One, I think you make a fair point. Is it worth talking about more details if there is some risk of that not being permitted? And I appreciate Mr. Westerling's comments that we wouldn't want to remove trees and then have that driveway location not be permitted. At the same time, I guess I'd look to the applicant and just following on your comments there, if maybe it makes sense to postpone further dialogue on this until we have some clarification from DPW and from input from our town council on whether or not this would be an allowable location for a driveway. That's a question for you, Mr. Gassett.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that.
Sorry, I was just asking that in light of Ms. Kramer's comments that I think it might be hard for us to move forward with the decision here without knowing if the DPW would in fact permit this as a driveway location. I'm asking if it might make sense just to forego further discussion until we have some clarification from DPW.
All right, well, that's different from the discussion I felt that I had with Mr. Westland out there. I just, again, it's obviously you can't notice, but the massive tree on the right side, I think makes it a little difficult on the eastbound side, trying to do anything. Obviously, we've engineered and done some work on line of sight. And my concern of having it up top would be if you pull out, all of a sudden your vision's blocked by the width of this large tree. If I put that, you know, it's a pretty big oak tree. 53 inches is the base. That's a pretty tricky tree to try to get around if you're edged out to the edge of that road, because it's right on the road. So I know you'd have a line of sight if you obviously back in on the lot. But once you do approach, obviously, as everybody does, when you approach the edge of the road, you want to still be able to see a distance either way. In this particular case, if you edge out and you're one way or the other, no matter which side you're on, you're limited to your response time on poking out in front of, and the road is even slightly narrow up on that end, and it has a little hook in it. You'd really have to, you know, see how the road is, but I just, that's why I'm really trying to stay to the far left, west side of the property, because it gives you quite a distance from that coming from the west side. east side is fine, you know, once I remove that one tree. It just makes total sense to put the driveway there. I think that, and obviously nobody would ever want to see that 53-inch oak tree removed. I hate to see that go.
I personally totally agree with you, but I also am listening to the comments of our director of our DPW, and what I don't want to do is I don't want to move forward and approve a removal of 2 trees if that in fact is not the right location. So if you and the DPW can come to terms on where the right driveway location is, and if that means that we need to remove a tree or 2, then you know that's what we should be discussing. But I just don't want to prematurely cut those down before we before we have agreement on where the best driveway location is.
Okay.
Through the chair.
Yes.
I appreciate the concerns about the 53-inch oak tree, but when I met with Mr. Gassett out there, we talked about the possibility of relocating the driveway to the west side, but there was a reluctance to relocate the driveway to a safer location, in my opinion, because of the way that the lot was laid out and the location of the house. But Mr. Marquardon did not evaluate that other location to the westerly side. So a compromise that we had thought of in the field was to indemnify the town. And I'm just double checking. I only received that this morning at 11 o'clock a.m. So it was sent to town council today. But of course, town council didn't have the opportunity to review and comment on this. I'm not sure if the town would be able to permit a driveway in its proposed location.
Yep, understood.
Okay.
So, Mr. Gassett, would you be willing to consider continuing this scenic road hearing?
Yes.
Until we have some clarification there on.
Yeah.
Okay. And again, given this is a scenic road, I'm as you heard previously, our schedule is getting full. You know,
I just tried to put my hand up, but apparently I'm not being allowed to speak.
Nope. You know, we hear you. I'll call on you in just a moment, but I just let me finish my thought. Mr. Gelsich, what's your take? Is this something that you think we could fit in on the 28th of September?
So let me just pull up the so 2 of the hearings in September 28th are scenic roads. So one of them is the Fruit Street scenic road for the MassDOT work. That may take a little while, but the other one on 20 Saddle Hill is probably not going to be too extensive. So I don't see, if everything is resolved with this and a new entrance is agreed upon, I don't see this taking up enough time to make that an issue.
Okay. All right, thanks. And real quick, before we do that, the SMC must be Mr. McGrail there. Mr. McGrail, did you want to say something?
Yeah. So thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. And I just want you to know, we spent a lot of time looking at the different site options. Dave Marquardt is on, and you know, we'll refrain from speaking, obviously, until we can have another discussion on this. But if you think of how the lot is laid out with the 52-inch oak all the way on the right-hand side, the closer you get to that, one proposal was to put the driveway in the middle of the lot, which frankly would have put me very close to this tree in a large swale. So when you come over the swale, your sight line is obstructed. And as you drop in, you're right on top of a driveway, the closer we put it to the center of the lot. The lot's only 300 feet long. And if we attempt to go to the right side of it, you have to pull out right next to this large oak. So literally with no line of sight whatsoever to the right-hand side. So you have to pull a car 3/4 of the way out into the road to get any line of sight down the road. So We moved down that road to create the greatest amount of safety for me and my family. And I have two young drivers, one who's just getting his permit right now. So safety was the key here. And, hence the decision to move it where it was. No matter where we move on this lot line, we're going to have to take some trees, it looks like. So I understand the concern and certainly, respect it. But regardless, we'd have to move a tree or two. So I think for me and my family, this is the best option, and it's the safest option by far and away. And I did want to mention the indemnification. I was asked to give the indemnification, so we agreed to that. So I don't know if that's unusual or not. I hadn't ever heard of it, but since it was requested of me, I immediately agreed to do so.
Thank you.
So thank you for allowing me to speak. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and I appreciate your comments. And as I said, this very well might be the right location. I just want to make sure that it's the right location before we go start cutting trees. So I think at the end of the day, we should be able to squeeze this in 2 weeks, and I don't think that will have a major impact.
Thank you so much.
All right, so I will entertain a motion to continue this public hearing to September 28th.
Rob Benson, so moved.
Steinberg, second.
All right, and in light of no further discussion, we'll move.
Chief Slaman has a comment, Gary, if you want to take it.
Oh, he does. Yes, Chief Slaman.
Hi, just a quick comment. If Dave might have already done it, a swept path analysis that shows we'll actually be able to make the turn. I know it's part of the bylaw, but I hate to see you move some trees and take some wall down and then say, oops, I did talk about that with Brian. Thanks.
Thanks, Chief. Okay, so one more action item for Mr. Gassett, just to check on that swept path analysis. All right, so we'll move to a roll call vote on continuing this public hearing to September 28th, 2020. Gary Trendle, yes. Rob?
Rob Benson, yes.
Dave?
Dave Paul, yes.
Mary?
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Deb?
Deborah Steinberg, yes.
Sundar?
Sundar Subramanian, yes.
Muriel?
Muriel Kramer, yes.
And Fran?
Fran DeYoung, yes.
Okay, so thank you, Mr. McGrail and Mr. Gassett, and we will see you in 2 weeks, and hopefully we can get some alignment on the best location for that driveway.
Thank you
very much, everybody.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Petrozzi. I saw you earlier.
Yeah, he's here. He's still on mute.
Hey, how are you?
There you are.
I'm still awake.
Hey, I'm moving the schedule is actually not bad. We're only about actually 12 minutes behind where my plan was for tonight. So
Well, it's always more comfortable to be at home in your living room, being able to listen to the meeting.
Yep, that is true.
One of the
So I know that you are familiar with our process, and we'll go ahead and get that kicked off now. So I'll hand the mic over to you, and if you want to just give us I guess it's not so much an update because this is a new application, but if you just want to let us know where things stand, that'd be great.
Sure. Since we last met, the Conservation Commission has granted us an order of conditions to construct 3 homes on the property as shown on the plan, and also given us an order of conditions to construct Leonard Street or extend Leonard Street an extra additional 250 feet from the end of the pavement to access the proposed driveways for these lots. And we're kind of in a holding pattern right now until the planning board has, as you may recall at the last meeting, the planning board determined that this was a way in existence, but that the concern was that there wasn't adequate access being provided along the frontage of the property where these driveways were going to enter onto Leonard Street. So our plan, or our petition to construct that portion of Leonard Street was prepared and submitted. And we haven't received any comments, although I think Beta is in the process of doing a peer review of the plan. And so that's essentially where it stands right now. We're looking for any comments or feedback regarding the proposal. And it's basically in the planning board's hands at this point.
Okay. And I think there's some good news because we do have a beta report. I know that the fire chief has some comments as well. I think if you haven't seen them, we do have some updates. And again, I just want to clarify or confirm though. So at the last planning board meeting, we had talked about trying to somehow, I don't remember what the terminology was, but trying to enable you to do the A&R and the construction of the road at the same time. And it sounds like what you're proposing now is that the road be constructed first, and then you would follow up with a subsequent A&R.
Well, we prefer, from a practical standpoint, to have the A&R endorsed with a covenant.
Covenant, thank you. That's what I was.
And treat it as if like you would an ordinary subdivision. So that would allow us to secure our financing and other requirements to at least show that the lots have been approved for three, as an A&R for 3 lots. And then not seek any building permits until the roadway has been constructed and or bonded, as you would typically require for your subdivisions. So we would still like to proceed, and that would be the easier way to do it. We're kind of caught in a little catch-22 because the Conservation Commission wants us to get all our permits in hand before we start construction. And the planning board wants us to start construction and build the road before we get our endorsement. So we're kind of like in the middle of 2 requirements. So we'd still prefer to do, if the planning board would approve the plan, endorse the plan, provide a covenant with security or bonding at some point, and then proceed as if it were a typical subdivision plan.
Okay, understood. But for now, we're just talking about the petition to construct Leonard Street.
Correct.
Okay. Mr. Gelsich, do you have a staff report?
So this is pretty straightforward. It's the construction of a private street. The regulations state that the road is to be constructed to subdivision standards or as close to as possible. Again, not going to repeat the comments that Beta has made or that anyone else has made. I do want to add that Town Council has advised that the covenant process is not something that the planning board should move forward with. Additionally, the concern with the Concom, I think, is there may be a little miscommunication somewhere. The A&R development and the road development are 2 separate things in the eyes of the planning board. The Concom might not understand it that way. So if Mr. Petrosi would like to construct the road, and the planning board issues the approval for the petition to construct the road, those permits in terms of the planning board would be all that would be needed. There would also be obviously a building permit and stuff like that, but you wouldn't need the A&R to construct the road in order to satisfy the Concom's requirements. If it were a subdivision, that would be different because you'd have to have the subdivision approval and then all the other approvals associated with that. But it really is 2 separate projects. So just want to clarify that. Other than that, there's a number of waivers being requested, so the board needs to review those. And the public hearing outline has been reduced just because it's a different type of project than is normally before the board. So that's my report.
All right. Thank you, John. Mr. Paradise, you still on the line if you want to walk through your review?
So yeah, I don't know that I have a lot to add to what John stated. There's a number of waiver requests that are should be discussed as you guys are aware, the Leonard Street is not a robust road. They're extending it another 250 feet. A lot of these things, a lot of the waivers are in line with the existing road and such, but that would be the bulk of your review is going through those waivers. Beta was on board when we reviewed it for conservation relative to stormwater management. So Lou has addressed all our comments relative to that, and it meets the standards generally. So I think generally we are okay with the project, except for the issue of turnaround and access to the driveways relative to emergency vehicles, et cetera. And I'm sure the fire chief has some issues with as well that would need to be worked out. So we would at a minimum need to see a turning template to show that the fire trucks can get in and out of the driveways and turn around where they're asking for a waiver from a cul-de-sac turnaround situation. So.
All right, thank you, sir. On that note, let's hear from Chief Slaman. I know you had some comments on this as well, so looks like you're unmuted. So welcome back.
Sure, thank you. I think just a little context. Process is where I get lost a little bit in all of these. So I'm talking in the form of what I normally would have as a list of assessments towards a subdivision or towards a road. So that's kind of what you saw listed out. I have had some dialogue with Mr. Petrozzi on different ways it could go, but I like starting from the beginning and saying, normally I have good access on a road that's 20 feet long and there's water there. And if there isn't water there, then we talk about alternatives like cisterns or sprinkler systems. And I look for good turning. So you'll see that all listed out in my comments. I'm not sure exactly where this all lands in process. So if anybody has questions or if anybody knows exactly where it fits, I guess I can feed in from there. Thank you.
All right, so just thinking how to move forward with that, because from a scope perspective, subdivision versus a street. I mean, this isn't a subdivision, and John, maybe if you can help me out a little bit here so that we can make sure that we've properly calling out the key components of Chief Slaman's comments. What is the best way for him to be looking at this from a public safety perspective?
So in the bylaws, it states that any petition to construct a street should adhere as close to the subdivision standards as possible. So I think reviewing it as a subdivision road is appropriate.
Okay. Thank you. That's helpful. So Chief Slaman, would it be, I mean, I guess two options. One, if you want to just summarize your comments now,
sure.
Before we get into the outline, that might be the most efficient way for you.
Okay.
Or we can just sort of hold off until we get to those specific items in the outline.
Great. So I've done a little background check-in, obviously just starting with Leonard Street. Leonard Street is challenging, and we took some measurements. The town has advised me that there is some room for easement to so that Leonard Street could be made wider. The town water, municipal water for fire protection does not go down Leonard Street. I understand that there is a 2-inch water supply line that was put into the road, but there's nothing there that would satisfy any fire protection in any way. I did kind of submit the day before your first hearing on this. I drove down Leonard Street, and there was kind of that perfect scenario where I sent you a videotape of what we run into when we deal with a one-way street that people park on and people landscape and park their vehicles. So the reason that we have these bylaws, I'm a firm believer that there is public safety in the background of all the language of distance traveled and number of houses in a dead-end street. Currently, there's language of 500 feet and 1,000 feet, and they talk about no more than 10 houses. So I think a lot of those, we're starting to break those barriers in this scenario. So I think you need to weigh in on that. Each house you add to a dead-end street increases the risk equation for that area. You mentioned in Beta's report, how we would turn around there. This length, I talked to Mr. Petrozzi today, the perfect scenario for the fire chief is that there's a connector road somehow, and we did come up with that in the box mill solution before. So I asked, I'd love to hear that first and demonstrate why we couldn't get that connection. And if we can't, then I think our next option has to do with length and cul-de-sacs. And then let me just keep going with assessments as we work our way down to non-qualifiers. I spoke with Mr. Wessling today. He would be open if for the water main to be extended down Leonard Street as a solution. Not that he wants to do it, but if that's something that the builder is interested in as a project, that is open for him to explore. And when it got to the driveways, and I know that somebody commented that the other commission, sorry, wetlands, Concom talked about, the driveway solution that got talked about. Again, I feel like I'm at the end of bargaining against myself when we start to put common driveways and call them something else in the land. And what I worry about is, I'm not a fan of common driveways. They can cause some confusion. I know we can use them in some solutions, but usually we balance them with some other form of compromise of public safety. So I did offer to Mr. Petrozzi, if that gets all the way to that point that we're talking about, maybe we sprinkle the houses like we talked about at Buckland or not, was kind of an offered suggestion. Again, I'm not sure where this whole bargaining or compromise or solution would come from. In the driveways, we do need to be able to access them, so there should be a swept path analysis. I just as soon have them not be common and just be standard driveways that meet the driveway bylaw if possible. I do understand we're trying to preserve certain wetlands, and that's where we could get into those other conversations if that's where it goes, if that's where the conversation goes. And I think that's my best quick snapshot for you, sir.
Okay. So I'm hearing two things. One is vehicle access, and I will tell you, I've been down that street twice just to check it out, and both times it was hard to get down the street. So I hear you there. And then the second one is around, clearly fire protection or dealing with those types of situations. So to your point, multiple ways to address that, but there's some discomfort with what's currently been proposed and your ability to deal with the situation if it occurs. So. All right, so what we'll go ahead and do is, again, from an outline perspective, we have detailed discussion that we will go through. And we have the opportunity, as John mentioned, this is a shortened one, given that it is just a street petition. Shouldn't say just a street petition, but it's a little bit simpler than some of the other outlines that we deal with. And then we can go ahead. So we'll go ahead and take input on anything that we would want to add to that agenda. And then we can start working our way through that. And really quickly, just if there are members of the public that want to add to it, we'll also open it up to them. Again, we're not looking to get into detail on these topics. We just want to make sure that we have a solid outline that we're going to work through. So topics that are on it now. Vehicular and pedestrian traffic flow, truck traffic flow, emergency vehicle access, stormwater management, utilities, including water and sewer, crosswalk locations or sidewalks, historic structures if applicable, impact on schools, other municipal services, value of neighboring residential properties, although, yeah, and then town department and board committee comments not covered above. So at this point, we'll start with planning board and see if there are other topics that we would want to add to the agenda. Mr. DeYoung.
So through the chair, and this might be covered under stormwater management, and maybe a first question is, it's been a little while since I've been down there, but isn't the end of the road not paved currently?
Yes.
Correct. So under stormwater management, I just want to make sure that we're discussing and capturing issues of an impervious surface, which is what the paving will do to it, and then questions of runoff, right? So it may be captured there under stormwater management, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make sure we're very specific about that.
Yeah. Thanks, Fran. Other comments from the or other topics to add from the board?
Through the chair.
Yes, go ahead, Mary.
I just wondered if snow removal and snow storage from the removal is needs to be separately listed.
I think that's a great point. Thanks, Mary. Other planning board members, any other topics?
I have something that we clean up. I think we could take out historic structures. And I think we could take out crosswalk location. Just to clean it up to get through it quicker.
I think that's fair. And then the other thing, so, sorry, Sundar, did you have?
No.
No? Okay, I just saw it pop up there. Just as I look at the requested waivers, I'm wondering if we want to make sure to talk in a little bit more detail around the street construction itself, and in particular the curbing. And then anything around side slopes, because I think there's some reasonably substantial slide slopes there that we'll want to cover. So just thinking that it's worth adding a topic on the street construction itself, which I don't really see here.
Through you, Mr. Chair, since we're talking about waivers, can I ask a question? Yes.
Not yet. Let's get through unless it's related to the outline.
Okay, I didn't understand one of the waivers. I think it might be a typo or something. So
okay,
I'll get to it later.
We'll get to that later. All right. Any other topics that we would want to add to the outline? And just as I think about it, okay. I see that Joanna Hilbert has her hand raised, so if we can unmute her, and you can just confirm your name and your address. And again, just want to clarify, we're just adding topics to the outline right now, so we're not looking to get into a detailed discussion. We just want to make sure there's something else we need to talk about that we add it to the outline. So go ahead, the mic is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Joanna Giorgio Hilbert from Mackey and Mackey. I'm here on behalf of Michael and Denise Hildreth at 19 Leonard Street. They are the butter across the street.
I'm sorry. You're
at the end.
You're breaking up.
Gravel driveway.
I'm sorry.
Looks like you're going to be discussing waivers later on in the agenda. So
I'm sorry. You're breaking up. We can't hear you, and it looks like you're picture's frozen. I'm wondering if maybe you turn off the video, then maybe we can hear you.
Let me see if I can get to a more stable connection.
Okay.
Is that any better?
Yes, much better. Thank you. Can
No?
you start over again? Because we didn't, I know I didn't really hear anything you said.
You can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you now.
Sure. My name is Joanna Hilbert. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Terrific. I'm from Mackey and Mackey, and I'm here on behalf of Michael and Denise Hildreth at 19 Leonard Street. They are the abutters across the way, across Leonard Street at the end of the gravel road. It looks like from the outline you'll be discussing waivers at a certain point. Is that correct?
Yes, we will.
Okay, terrific. I had submitted a comment letter. We also wanted to discuss the concept of illusory access, given the location of the wetlands along the boundary of between the lot in question and Leonard Street.
Okay, we will add that.
I'm not sure if town council has had an opportunity to review the letter and have weighed in on that yet.
They have not, no. But we can certainly add that to the outline, and you know, to your comments in your letter, we can discuss that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay. Let me just check really quick here. Okay. So I guess at this point, we can go ahead and move into the outline. And I think the first item we have here is vehicular and pedestrian traffic flow, truck traffic flow, and emergency vehicle access. So, Mr. Petrosi, you've heard, I think, some of the concerns from the fire chief, and I know that we'll likely have other questions just with regards to truck deliveries and turning around and whatnot. Do you just want to comment on how you plan to address those concerns?
Sure. As the chief and I have spoken a couple of times, and he's correct, and you probably have noticed that Leonard Street, which is the public portion of Leonard Street, has a paved surface roughly about 17 feet wide, no sidewalks, and I think just recently they added a Cape Cod berm to one side of the street. We'll be our 250-foot extension of Leonard Street that's private would be constructed with a 20-foot wide paved surface, and we'll have sufficient access for trucks to turn into our driveways and actually turn around within the lots themselves and exit from the properties without any problems. The driveways have been designed to accommodate the public safety and fire apparatus that the fire department has and other emergency vehicles. So we feel pretty confident that we're providing for our portion of the property, Leonard Street, adequate access for these types of vehicles.
And have you done the SWOT analysis?
We haven't, but pretty confident that, you know, when we were proposing Buckland Street, we had a 20-foot wide paved surface there and similar type driveways. And the SWOT analysis worked fine. And we'll be able to provide that to the planning board and to the fire chief for review.
Okay. And so just to confirm, so if a truck comes down the street, is their only option to turn around in someone's driveway?
Well, right now, Leonard Street is, as you know, is fairly narrow. I don't know what, let's say a UPS or a FedEx driver would do. But with the addition of Box Mill, I see vehicles turning down Box Mill and turning around in that cul-de-sac and going out. For our purposes, we're going to, as part of our construction of Leonard Street, we're providing a hammerhead at the end of our paved surface so that vehicles will be able to turn within the driveway that we're proposing at between lot 2 and 3. There'll be a hammerhead there that trucks will be able to turn in and out of that driveway and exit Leonard Street that way.
Okay. Do you have and maybe do you have a drawing you can show that on, or if you don't, then maybe Mr. Geltish can pull it up.
I don't. I'm sorry.
Okay. John, are you able to pull up the drawing so that people can see what Mr. Petrozzi is describing?
Mr. Petrozzi, would be the 3-lot development plan that would be best?
Yes, yes.
And John, I think it's page 4 of the 8 sheets.
Yeah, sheet 4, yes.
Curious, just while he's pulling it up, is there any reason to not consider just putting in a cul-de-sac?
There's just a lot of wetlands that on either side of the right of way, and to put in a cul-de-sac would require extensive filling of wetlands. Under this proposal, we're not filling any wetlands on the property. But a cul-de-sac would be quite extensive for filling.
Okay. And John, can you zoom in? I just wanted to see the. Okay, so you've got the common driveway that goes back to the 2 houses.
Well, it's really not a common driveway. It's actually 2 driveways with the property line dividing the 2 driveways. And that's meant to serve as adequate width. The 2 driveways are 11 feet wide pavement each with a couple of feet in the middle, and it's available for large fire apparatus and other trucks to turn in and go into the properties, and also to back out and exit on Leonard Street.
Okay. Sorry, just to clarify. So is there space between those 2 driveways?
Yeah, just a couple of feet. It's just sort of like where the property line would be. And I mentioned briefly to the fire chief today that, we'd be happy to pave that section for a certain distance just to give him even more space to turn vehicles in and out of that property.
Okay. And so what you're saying here is that if a truck needed to turn around, they would pull into one or both of those driveways and then back out around and then pull out.
Correct. And I believe all of the driveways have been designed compliant with the driveway parameters that are whatever the requirements are in terms of width and turning radiuses.
Okay. Okay. Any questions or comments from the board with regards to vehicle and pedestrian traffic flow?
Yes. May I?
Yes, please, Mary, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I am just wondering where, what the extent of the extension of Leonard Street, where you're planning on stopping. Is it right after those 2?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So
I think there's is there a line there?
There's a line slightly right there. That's where the edge of, that's where we're proposing the edge of pavement to be.
Okay.
We could extend it a little bit further down if necessary, but Leonard Street, that private portion of Leonard Street could really extend all the way down to the rail trail, which is like another, I don't know, 1,200 linear feet. That's something that is not within our, we don't own any property down there, so we don't have any jurisdiction over it.
Okay. So, okay. And there's wetlands right up to the edge of the road, your proposed construction, pretty much right up to the edge.
In that particular location, there's like a drainage ditch along the side of the road that takes water down through a wetland all the way down to the rail trail, the rail bed.
There's one that you're building, or there's one that exists already?
Already exists.
Okay, and that's on the south side of, I mean,
Yeah, you can see
the bottom.
that on the bottom. Yeah, it's right on the south side of the right of way.
Okay, so there's one right along there. Okay.
Yeah.
But the wetlands on your property go right up to the edge of the road, more or less.
Yeah, pretty close to the road in that location, yes.
Okay, thank you.
To the chair.
Yes, go ahead, Dave.
Thank you. I don't know if anybody else had this concern, but I'm concerned about the double driveway, and it's basically creating a road without all the standards of it. Why wouldn't we just go with a single common driveway versus? I'm asking the applicant.
Well, I think as you heard the chief earlier, common driveway would be require a special permit, and it's for situations where you don't want to impact or where you can't get other driveways constructed. This happens to be a location where we have enough sufficient area to construct two individual driveways to service the proposed lots. The fact that they're side by side is immaterial. It's the two constructed to driveway standards, not roadway standards. So we think it's a better way to identify the lots and have access to the individual homes rather than a common driveway.
To the chair, just a final comment.
Go ahead, Dave.
I'm not sure we have that created anywhere else in Hopkinton, so I would be a little bit hesitant.
We do down off of Hayden Row on the southern end, right before the Milford town line. There's there's some multiple driveways that kind of run next to each other, and I think there's some other places in town that are maybe not the length of this, but are somewhat similar.
My driveway.
There we go.
Can't be your driveway. It's got to be yours and somebody else's.
No, because they're two separate driveways.
Because they're separate driveways, but they're right next to each other.
Okay. Thanks, Dave, for the question. Any other questions or comments from the board on vehicular and pedestrian traffic flow? I mean, I share some of the concerns, and I'm not really crazy about the hammerhead turnaround and having to be dependent on pulling into someone's driveway to turn around. Just knowing how many cars go wandering down and looking for something to require them to access private property to turn around just makes me a little bit uncomfortable. Go ahead,
I'm sorry. I'm having a hard time seeing where the hammerhead turnaround is.
It's right where you see existing gravel roadway.
Yes.
Just a little bit in that location right there. That's the edge of the pavement that we're proposing.
Yeah.
And the hammerhead would incorporate the two driveways with that extension.
I see.
And that would
I
be
see.
the hammerhead.
Okay,
Driveways are the handle.
I gotcha.
Okay. Well, let's go to the public, and it looks like Ms. Hilvert has her hand raised, so if we can unmute her.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is this a better connection?
Yes.
Great. Sorry about that before. A couple of questions on the vehicular and pedestrian traffic flow, and the first is really just a general comment slash question, which is that the plans don't really give a good picture of the way, how it's laid out. Part of the subdivision requirements, and as town council and Mr. Gelsich have pointed out, this does need to meet subdivision requirements for a road, is that we are shown the layout of the road on the plans. And it's difficult for the public to review these plans when we don't have any measurements, we don't have a clear layout shown of this road. That being said, from what I can see, the Hildreths are concerned about the traffic coming down that road and the narrow the road, adding 3 lots to that narrow road would create some traffic concerns. Also, from an access standpoint, I think this is an appropriate time to bring up the illusory access, given that the wetlands do come right to the property line, as Mr. Petrosi pointed out. In order for this road to meet the access requirement, there has to be actual access, and having the wetlands abut the road prevents that access and would create illusory access.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Petrosi.
Obviously, council is incorrect. We do have access from our legal frontage without crossing any wetlands. And I would disagree with her regarding this argument of illusory access. We have access from uplands, from the right of way, from frontage for the individual lots. So I don't think that argument is valid in any way. And for councils, on sheet 7 of the plan set is a cross section of the Leonard Street portion that we are paving. Shows the details of the width of the roadway plus the construction of the right of way that we're going to be doing. So I think that's what's required under your regulations.
I think what she was referring to was just on the plan, where the existing driveway was, and to me it was reasonably clear. I don't know, Ms. Hilbert, if you were looking for something more that was on than what's on page 4 that was up previously.
Well, I think even members of the planning board had some questions about where exactly the end of the pavement is, what is the width of that section, where it extends to, what the length is. I agree, I did see the cross-section portion of the plan, but I do think, if we're going to be looking at waivers and trying to determine whether waivers are appropriate given the design standards, we need to be able to fully understand the design of the road, the proposed road. And then as far as the illusory access point, I think that really is just a question for town council.
Yes.
So we would request that they do weigh in on that.
Yep, I was going to request it as well. And candidly, illusory access is a new term for me that I haven't dealt with in my time in the planning board. So given the disagreement between the two of you, I agree. I'd like to request some input from our town council on that.
Through the chair, this is Rob. Do we have an example of where a hammerhead turnaround is using someone's private property? Like, that doesn't seem kosher to me.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, go ahead, Lou.
So on the previous plan that we had for Buckland Street, the planning board had allowed us to use a hammerhead turnaround with the existing driveways that were being proposed on that proposal. So the hammerhead is a alternative turnaround that is commonly used by the fire department or to allow adequate turning for a fire apparatus and other vehicles at the end of a dead-end street.
Through the chair,
Go ahead, Rob.
I understand a hammerhead is commonly used, and I understand all the benefits, but it's going to be somebody's property. Like we're looking at this road and improving the road with that as the planned way they're going to access it. Say those two homeowners decide to put a gate on their driveways. Like they think that it's a exclusive residence. They put a gate. That hammerhead is gone.
Well, we would, Mr. Chairman, if you,
please go ahead.
We would be happy to create an easement on that portion of the driveway so that installation of any gate or obstacle would never exist there for you. So that you are correct. That could happen if we weren't able to give an easement to the town, but we would provide an easement to the town for turning and access.
Okay.
I would note that that's not on just
excuse me.
Mr. Petrosi's
Sorry.
land.
If you can speak through the chair.
I'm sorry, through the chair.
Yes, go ahead.
I would note that that's not just on Mr. Petrosi's land. It's on both the Hildreth and McBride land as well.
That's not true.
Okay. So we're not gonna. I'd rather not have back and forth on that. We can. And again, we can.
Council should know better.
Okay, Mr. Petrosi, we're not going to have any back and forth or comments such as that. So, just asking a question and making a point, and there will be a point in time where we can discuss that as appropriate. So, we are almost up on time. I see that Mr. Terry has patiently raised his hand and is waiting to comment. So we'll go ahead and take that comment from Mr. Terry, and then we'll need to go ahead and continue this. So, Mr. Terry, go ahead, or let us unmute you, and then.
Mr. Terry, you need to unmute yourself. I can't unmute you.
Should be, I think, in the lower left part of the screen.
He might be muted on a microphone or something else.
Through the chair,
Yes, Mary.
I just have a question and request, and that the next time we meet, if we could also see the turning maps, is that what they call it, for the fire trucks?
Sure.
Swap analysis.
And yeah, that kind of thing, that would be helpful. And just to see a more clear picture of this part of the road. I'd also appreciate just knowing the full length of Leonard Street with this extension, so what it is now, and then what the extension is, just the number of feet.
Good questions. Thanks, Mary. All right, Mr. Terry, you are unmuted. If you can state your name and address.
Tom Terry at 17 Maple Street. I own the property that's down at the end of the street, that large field that's down there. There's 7 acres down there that meets up with the trail. So I've been interested in the project because a lot of the water comes my way. And one of my questions was the drainage of the water. I heard you mention the word berm on the road that was to be built. And if the berm is built, where does the berm, instead of having the water run off? I thought Mr. Pedrosi had said at one meeting that they were going to pitch the road rather than have a berm, pitch it into the retention area. And that way you wouldn't have it all running down and now meeting onto a gravel driveway and coming down by the Hildreth property and onto my, or finding its way by gravity onto my property. So I was concerned that that be taken care of. And also the width of the road. I was down there today, and there's quite a few areas down there where this road is just 13 feet. It's going to be difficult to find a place, if those orange fences that are already up mean anything, that you can get anything more than 13 or 14 feet for a road to go down there. I was hoping it would be a wider road. And one other thing, and I'll be quick, is oil truck backing in. Obviously, you're not going to have natural gas down there. You're going to have bottled gas, which has large trucks or oil trucks. They're going to have to back in on the single road for one apartment, one of those houses, and the double road. So it might be good if they were made to heavier standards, because those trucks, unless you can make the delivery people come with nothing on their trucks, they weigh many, many tons, and they'll chew up a driveway in a cold frozen driveway with a full load of oil on them, and in no time there'll be a liability involved there. So that should be a concern, and it's good that the driveway is double together, and they probably could join them in the middle, because it's going to be hard for an oil truck and a snowstorm to back in there and try to find a way to stay on the hot top pavement. Be much safer if it was one big, large, rugged surface. That's it. Thanks.
Thanks, Mr. Terry. So I know one of those questions was about stormwater management, which I think probably warrants a little bit more time. So if it's okay, we'll go ahead and hold that for our continued discussion. I know from a schedule perspective, our September 28th meeting is full and got fuller tonight. So John, how are things shaping up for the next meeting after that, which is October 19th?
So it's just the Deer Ridge on October 19th, but I'll also point out that one of the hearings on the 28th is the Buckland one.
Ah, okay.
Good
All right.
timing.
Well, then let's, Mr. Petrozzi, are you okay if well, how does that formally work, John? Because I'd love to just take that slot that we have for Buckland and Leonard and slot this one in, which I'm sure Mr. Petrozzi would prefer.
Sure. We can continue the Buckland hearings and schedule this hearing in its place.
So process-wise, if Mr. Petrozzi makes that request, I'm sure doing it right now is probably fine. But if he could just send an email to me requesting a continuation, the board can vote on it at the 28th, and then we could add this to the agenda now, and then vote to continue the Buckland Leonard on the 28th.
Okay, that seems reasonable. Does that work for you, Lou?
Yeah, that would be agreeable for sure. Thank you.
Okay. So I will entertain a motion to continue this hearing to September 28th.
Rob Benson, so moved.
Deborah Feinberg, second.
All right. In absence of any further discussion, we'll move to roll call vote. Gary Trendle, yes. Rob?
Rob Benson, yes.
Dave?
Paul, yes.
Mary?
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Deb?
Deborah Feinberg, yes.
Sundar?
Sundar Sivaram, yes.
Muriel?
Muriel Kramer, yes.
And Fran? Fran, you still there? You muted?
I'm mute. I'm on mute. Randy Young, yes.
All right, thanks, Fran. And we will we'll have an updated version of the outline as well, just to include the additional requests that we had from folks.
So, Mr. Chair, if I could just jump in.
Yes.
Mr. Petrozzi, just to really hammer this point home, if you could send me an email requesting a continuation of the hearing prior to the meeting on the 28th, and for the continuation of the decision as well, just so we have a paper.
Yes, absolutely. And Mr. Chairman, is there any other additional information? I know that the SWEP analysis for the fire apparatus, we can provide that. Is there any other additional information that the board would like to see relative to the plan or the agenda that you have?
Yeah, I mean, I think you heard the areas of interest. So
Yeah.
if you have anything on stormwater management and, particularly with, to Fran's point about as we convert that gravel surface to an impervious surface, I think that it would certainly help if there were, we didn't go, if there were any improvements to the drawings that show exactly the exact widths of the existing versus where you're going to widen. I think that would be helpful. And then swept analysis, we talked about that. And I think just in preparation, the fire chief's got some concerns about water access for fighting fires if necessary. So it might be worth putting some thought into how you might address those concerns.
Yes.
Those are the things that stand out to me.
Okay. Has the board?
Sorry.
Excuse me. Has the board been given the beta review of the stormwater management that was prepared for the Conservation Commission? Because I think that addresses a lot of the stormwater management concerns that the board may have.
I don't believe we have, and unfortunately my computer that I can access the files is down right now, but I think that's a fair request. So
we attached the latest stormwater report to the back of the.
It is okay.
Yep.
Data comments.
Okay. Yep. Thanks, Phil, and Lou. I think that's a fair request. So I will make sure to go through that prior to the 28th.
Okay. Great.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right. Last question just for the board, just as far as additional topics of discussion for future meetings. We had said we were going to be a little bit more planful in topics, but are there anything else that people want to add to our future agendas?
To the chair, maybe I'm getting tired, but did we vote to continue that meeting?
Yes, we did.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So in light of that, I will go ahead, Muriel.
The only thing I want to suggest through you, Mr. Chair, is that we establish some process where we communicate our updates on the master plan.
Yes.
Action items.
Yes. Thank you, Muriel. And I apologize to not mention that. And that's not on our agenda for tonight.
Right. So we can.
We'll make sure that it's on the agenda for the 28th. Yeah, we'll make sure that's on.
You and I had a chance to talk, and when we talk on the 28th, I am very open to any process that is efficient and we can report out efficiently to the public and to each other.
Yep.
So.
Yep. Great catch. Thank you.
One of the things that we did talk about was getting everything up on Google Drive so that it would be easier for everybody to share and it'd be all together in one spot. I don't know if that's possible, John, with an easy cut and paste of a document.
I'm sorry, I missed that. What was that?
Yeah, let's go ahead and save this for discussion. John, this is just with regards to the master plan updates and how to most efficiently manage and communicate those. So I had requested just other topics or other non-hearing related topics for future meetings, and that was one that I know we had originally talked about having tonight, and we pushed it just given the fullness of the schedule.
And then another topic would be updates from various different committees to find out what they're doing in conjunction with the planning board and how we can better understand the community as a whole along with the planning board. So like, from CPC, what are the plans that are going on in there? Because, we want to be able to be inclusive as well.
Yep. I think that's a reasonable request. And I know the 28th is going to be full, but John, if we can add to the October 19th meeting an administrative item on other committee updates. Okay, thanks everyone. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Rob Benson, second.
And without any further discussion, we'll do a roll call vote. Gary Trendle, yes. Rob?
Rob Benson, yes.
Dave?
Dave Paul, yes.
Mary?
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Deb?
Deborah Steinberg, yes.
Muriel?
Carol Kramer, yes.
And Fran?
Fran DeYoung, yes.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks everyone, and have a good evening and a good week.
Thank you.
You
Thank you.
too.
Good night.
Take care. Thank
Thanks.
you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.